She started the day thinking she'd just deliver a job and go home. Instead, she ended up on the pavement, her ankle throbbing, being blamed for not paying attention by a perfectly dressed executive with zero patience. What no one warned her about is that the real impact wasn't the car, it was the encounter, and the negotiation that comes after. That's the most unbelievable part. The rain came down in sheets, turning the downtown streets into a watercolor blur of grey and silver. Tessa Franklin clutched her leather portfolio against her chest, her phone wedged between her ear and shoulder, as she navigated the crosswalk with the confidence of someone who had walked these streets 1,000 times before. "Yes, Mr. Hoffman, I can have the German contract translated by Friday," she said, squinting through the downpour. "No, that includes the technical appendices. I've been doing this for 7 years. I know what—" She didn't see the silver sedan until it was almost too late. Jordan Ellis had exactly 47 minutes to close the Meridian Aviation deal before the Tokyo markets opened, and the CEO on the other end of the line was being unnecessarily difficult about the fleet specifications. His jaw tightened as he accelerated through the intersection, eyes flicking between the rain-slicked road and the dashboard display showing the call. "The Boeing 787s are non-negotiable," he said sharply, his fingers drumming against the steering wheel. "If you want range and fuel efficiency for the Pacific routes, that's what you—" The impact wasn't violent, but it was definitive. A sickening thud that made Jordan's heart stop, and his expensive Italian loafers slammed the brake pedal so hard the car fishtailed slightly. "I'll call you back," he said into the phone, not waiting for a response before ending the call. Tessa was on the ground, papers scattered across the wet pavement like wounded birds. Her portfolio had exploded on impact, sending client contracts, translation notes, and what appeared to be an entire German-English dictionary spiraling into puddles. The pain in her ankle was sharp and immediate, radiating up her leg in waves that made her vision swim. The driver's door opened, and a man emerged who looked like he'd stepped out of a cologne advertisement, all sharp jaw, dark hair slightly too long to be completely professional, and a charcoal suit that probably cost more than her rent. He was tall, easily over 6 feet, with the kind of presence that demanded attention even when he wasn't accidentally running people over. If this story is touching your heart, show your support. Leave a like, subscribe to the channel, and share it with your friends. Every action helps us keep bringing you new stories full of emotion. Their eyes met. His were dark, almost black in the rain, and currently filled with an emotion that Tessa couldn't quite identify. Concern? Anger? Both? "You were crossing outside the designated pedestrian zone," he said, his voice tight. Tessa blinked up at him from the pavement, water dripping into her eyes. "I'm sorry, did you actually just blame me for you hitting me with your car? I'm stating a fact. You weren't paying attention." "Neither were you." She tried to stand, and immediately regretted it. Her right ankle buckled, sending another lance of pain through her leg. "Oh, that's just perfect." Jordan's expression shifted slightly, something that might have been guilt flickering across his features. He moved forward, hands outstretched. "Don't try to stand, you might have—" "Don't touch me." Tessa swatted at his hands, which only made her lose balance again. This time, he caught her, his hands firm on her arms, steadying her against his chest. He smelled like expensive cologne and rain and something else she couldn't quite place. Cedar, maybe, or sandalwood. "You need medical attention," he said, his voice closer to her ear than she expected. "What I need is for entitled rich boys to pay attention to the road instead of their important business calls." She pushed away from him, ignoring how solid his chest had felt. "And to pick up my work that's currently dissolving into the gutter. I'll pay for replacements. These are client contracts. You can't just buy replacements. Some of these are original documents that—" She tried to bend down to grab the nearest paper and nearly collapsed again. Jordan caught her for the second time, and this time he didn't let go. "Hospital. Now. We can discuss your fascinating filing system later. I don't need—" "Your ankle is swelling. You can barely stand, and there are approximately 30 people with phones currently filming this entire interaction." He gestured to the growing crowd of onlookers, several of whom were indeed holding up smartphones. "So unless you want to become a viral video titled, 'Woman Argues with Man Who Hit Her Instead of Seeking Medical Care,' I suggest you let me drive you to the emergency room." Tessa wanted to argue. Every fiber of her being wanted to tell this arrogant suit-wearing, probably drives a car worth more than her life stranger, exactly where he could shove his hospital suggestion. But her ankle was throbbing, her papers were ruined, and she was soaked to the bone. "Fine," she bit out. "But I'm choosing the hospital, and you're paying for everything." "Obviously." He bent down, actually bent down in his expensive suit, and began gathering her scattered papers, shoving them haphazardly into the ruined portfolio. The gesture was oddly considerate for someone who'd just blamed her for their accident. "Careful with the Hoffman contract," she said despite herself. "The ink is probably running, but it's still—" "The German one? I've got it." He held up a waterlogged document covered in her neat handwriting and printed German text. "You translate technical documents?" "Among other things. Why, need someone to translate your personality into something acceptable." His eyes snapped to hers, and for a moment she thought she saw the corner of his mouth twitch. "Get in the car before I change my mind about being helpful." "Before you change your— You hit me!" "A fact you've mentioned. Repeatedly." The drive to the hospital was conducted in frigid silence, broken only by Tessa's occasional directions and Jordan's barely audible sighs. She studied him from the corner of her eye, the precise way he gripped the steering wheel, the slight tick in his jaw when they hit a red light, the way his dark hair curled slightly at his collar, despite what was clearly an expensive haircut. "You can stop staring," he said without looking at her. "I'm not staring. I'm observing. There's a difference." "Is there?" "Yes. Staring implies interest. Observing implies I'm gathering evidence for when I sue you." Now he did look at her, one eyebrow raised. "You're planning to sue me?" "Haven't decided yet. Depends on how expensive this hospital visit is." She shifted in the leather seat, trying to find a position that didn't make her ankle scream. "And whether your insurance covers arrogant driving. That's not a coverage category. It should be." When they arrived at the emergency room, Jordan insisted on staying despite Tessa's protests. He sat in the uncomfortable plastic chair beside her in the waiting area, looking completely out of place in his tailored suit among the fluorescent lights and magazine racks. "You don't have to stay," Tessa said, signing yet another form on the clipboard. "I'm sure you have very important business calls to make about very important airplane things." "Aviation management," he corrected automatically. "And I cleared my schedule." "How noble." "I'm not noble. I'm covering my bases legally. At least you're honest about being terrible." "I never claimed otherwise." A nurse called her name, and Jordan stood automatically, as if he intended to follow. Tessa held up a hand. "I can handle a doctor's appointment alone, Mr." She realized she didn't actually know his name. "Ellis, Jordan Ellis." He pulled out a business card from his wallet and handed it to her. It was thick, expensive cardstock. Of course it was. "Call me when you're done. I'll drive you home. I'll take a cab." "In the rain with an injured ankle?" "I'm from this city. I can handle—" "Tessa Franklin?" The nurse called again, more insistent this time. "That's me." Tessa stood, testing her weight on the injured ankle and immediately regretting it. Jordan's hand shot out to steady her elbow. "Stop being stubborn. Stop being controlling. Someone has to be the responsible adult here." "Says the man who hit me with his car." The nurse cleared her throat. "Should I come back?" "No," they said in unison, still glaring at each other. As Tessa hobbled away toward the examination room, she could feel Jordan's eyes on her back. She told herself the shiver that ran down her spine was from being wet and cold. It was definitely just from being wet and cold, nothing else. The diagnosis was exactly as dramatic as Tessa had feared. Moderate ankle sprain, complete with impressive swelling, potential bruising, and the doctor's stern recommendation for complete rest for at least 7 to 10 days. Complete rest means no walking unless absolutely necessary, Dr. Patel explained, making notes on her tablet. Ice, compression, elevation, the usual protocol. I'm also prescribing anti-inflammatories. 7 to 10 days? Tessa repeated, her mind already racing through her client list. I have deadlines, I work from home, but I still need to... Miss Franklin, if you don't rest properly now, you'll be dealing with chronic issues later. Trust me, a week and a half is better than months of physical therapy. Tessa slumped back against the examination table. Perfect. Just perfect. When she emerged from the exam room 45 minutes later, prescription in hand and a medical boot strapped to her right foot, Jordan was exactly where she'd left him. He was on his phone, naturally, but stood the moment he saw her. "Well?" he asked. "Moderate sprain. 7 to 10 days of rest. I'm fine." "You don't look fine." "Thank you for that stunning observation. You really know how to make a girl feel special." He ignored the sarcasm, his eyes dropping to the medical boot. "Can you walk?" "Obviously not well, or they wouldn't have given me this attractive footwear." She gestured to the boot. "But I can manage. I'll call a car service and—" "I'm taking you home. We've been through this—" "Tessa." The way he said her name made her pause. It wasn't commanding or arrogant. It was almost tired. "Let me do this one thing without an argument. Please." The please surprised her enough that she found herself nodding. The drive to her apartment in the Riverside district was quieter than the trip to the hospital. Jordan seemed lost in thought, his jaw working in a way that suggested he was having an internal argument with himself. Tessa watched the rain-soaked city slide past the window, trying not to think about how she was going to meet her deadlines, while stuck on her couch with her foot elevated. "This is it," she said, when they pulled up to her building. It wasn't fancy, a modest pre-war walk-up with a somewhat temperamental elevator, but it was hers and she loved it. Jordan studied the building with an expression she couldn't quite read. "Which floor?" "Third. There's an elevator." "Sometimes," she added under her breath. He helped her to the lobby and Tessa hated how much she actually needed the help, where they discovered that sometimes was not today. A handwritten sign taped to the elevator doors read, "Out of service. Repairs scheduled for next week." "Of course," Tessa muttered. "Of course it is. The stairs, then. I can manage." Without asking, Jordan bent and swept her up into his arms in one fluid motion. Tessa yelped, grabbing instinctively at his shoulders. "What are you doing? 3 flights is too much on that ankle." He started climbing the stairs as if she weighed nothing, which was annoying, very annoying. She should not be noticing how strong his arms were, or how his cologne smelled even better up close, or how his jaw was right there at her eye level, looking all carved and masculine and— "You can put me down any time now," she said, trying to keep her voice steady. "We're almost there. I have neighbors. They're going to think that I'm helping someone I accidentally injured." The horror, but she heard the slight smile in his voice. By the time they reached her floor, Tessa's cheeks were burning, and she was acutely aware of every point where their bodies touched. Jordan set her down carefully at her door, steadying her until she found her keys. "Thank you," she said stiffly, "for everything. Send me the hospital bill and I'm covering it." "Jordan, it's the least I can do." He paused, something shifting in his expression. "Take care of that ankle, Tessa." And then he was gone, disappearing down the stairwell before she could formulate a response. Tessa let herself into her apartment, hopping awkwardly to the couch and collapsing with a groan. She should feel relieved. The arrogant businessman was gone, she was home, and she could focus on damage control for her work. So why did her apartment suddenly feel too quiet? Jordan Ellis sat in his top-floor office the next morning, staring at the city skyline without really seeing it. His attorney, Marcus Chen, sat across from him with a concerned expression that Jordan had learned to dread over their 15-year professional relationship. "Let me make sure I understand this correctly," Marcus said slowly. "You hit a pedestrian with your car yesterday. Technically, she stepped into the street." "Jordan," Marcus held up a hand, "please don't finish that sentence. Were there witnesses?" "About 30 people with smartphones." Marcus closed his eyes briefly. "Of course there were. Has she contacted a lawyer yet?" "Not that I know of. But she could." Marcus leaned forward. "Jordan, this is potentially very problematic. Any decent attorney would advise her to sue, especially given your financial situation." "You mean the fact that I'm worth suing?" "Exactly. And with witnesses, video evidence, and documented injuries." Marcus shook his head. "The optics alone could be damaging to Ellis Aviation. We're in the middle of the Meridian merger. Any negative publicity could—" "I know." Jordan scrubbed a hand over his face. "What do you suggest?" "Demonstrate care. Show that you're taking full responsibility for her recovery. Make sure she has everything she needs. Medical care, physical therapy, whatever it takes." Marcus tapped his pen against his legal pad. "Essentially, make sure she knows you're committed to her complete recovery." It shows good faith, and it makes a lawsuit much less attractive. You want me to, what? Check in on her? More than that. I want you to ensure she's being properly cared for during her recovery period. Personally, if possible. Marcus met his eyes steadily. I know it sounds extreme, but trust me on this. A week or two of inconvenience is better than months of litigation and negative press. Jordan thought about Tessa, her sharp tongue, her fierce independence, the way she'd looked at him like he was something unpleasant she'd scraped off her shoe. She's going to say no. Then be persuasive. You're good at that when you want to be. Which is how Jordan found himself standing outside Tessa's apartment building that evening, a proposal forming in his mind that was either brilliant or completely insane, possibly both. He climbed the 3 flights of stairs, the elevator was still broken, and knocked on her door. There was a long pause, some shuffling, and then the door opened to reveal Tessa balanced on one foot, looking surprised and slightly disheveled in yoga pants and an oversized sweater that was sliding off one shoulder. "Jordan, what are you—" "I have a proposal," he said before she could finish. "Hear me out before you say no." Her eyes narrowed suspiciously. "I'm already saying no. You haven't heard it yet. I have a strong feeling I'm going to say no regardless." "Tessa," he took a breath, "stay at my penthouse for the next week, maybe 10 days, until your ankle is completely healed." She stared at him. "I'm sorry. I think the pain medication is affecting my hearing because it sounded like you just asked me to move into your penthouse. Temporarily, just until you're recovered." "Why?" "Because your elevator is broken. Because you're on the 3rd floor. Because you need rest and care, and because your lawyer told you to keep me happy so I don't sue you." Jordan's jaw tightened. "That's remarkably perceptive. I'm a professional translator. I read between the lines for a living." She leaned against the doorframe, arms crossed. "So what's in it for you besides avoiding a lawsuit?" "Peace of mind knowing I didn't permanently damage someone's ankle. Is that so hard to believe?" "From you, yes." "Ouch. You'll survive." But she was studying him now, her sharp green eyes calculating. "What's this penthouse like?" "Triplex. Panoramic city views. Full kitchen, though I rarely cook. High-speed internet. Fiber optic, best available. Guest room with an ensuite bathroom that includes a soaking tub. Temperature-controlled wine cellar, though I'm guessing that's less relevant to your interests. You forgot to mention the helipad and the butler named Jeeves." "No helipad, no butler, just space. Quiet. Everything you'd need to work comfortably while you recover." Tessa worried her bottom lip between her teeth, and Jordan found himself watching the gesture with more attention than was strictly appropriate. "1 week, she said finally. 7 days, not 10. Deal. And you stay out of my way. My penthouse has 3 floors. I don't think that'll be a problem. And I can leave whenever I want." "Absolutely." She studied him for another long moment, and Jordan had the unsettling feeling she could see straight through every carefully constructed wall he'd built around himself. "Fine," she said at last. "But if you turn out to be some kind of serial killer, I'm going to be very annoyed." "Noted. Pack a bag. I'll pick you up in 2 hours." As Jordan walked back down the stairs, he told himself this was purely practical, a business decision to avoid legal complications. He was an excellent liar, especially to himself. Jordan's penthouse was everything he'd promised, and somehow worse, or better. Tessa couldn't quite decide which, as she stood in the entrance, balancing on her good foot and trying not to let her jaw drop. Floor-to-ceiling windows dominated the space, offering a view of the city that looked like something out of an architecture magazine. The furniture was all clean lines and neutral tones, greys, whites, blacks, arranged with mathematical precision. Not a single item appeared out of place. Even the throw pillows on the leather sofa looked like they'd been positioned with a ruler. "This is—" she started. "Impressive," Jordan supplied, setting her suitcase down by the entrance. "Sterile. I was going to say sterile." She hobbled further into the space, her medical boot clunking against the polished hardwood. "Do you actually live here, or is this a showroom you're renting out?" His jaw tightened in that way she was beginning to recognize meant she'd hit a nerve. "I like things organized." "Organized is one thing. This looks like you'd break out in hives if someone moved a coaster 2 inches to the left. The coasters have designated positions for a reason. They prevent water rings on the—" He stopped, catching her smirk. "You're messing with me. Obviously, though I'm also serious. This place looks like a museum exhibit titled, "How Rich People Waste Space." It's minimalist design. It's sad. Jordan crossed his arms, leaning against the kitchen island. If you hate it so much, you're welcome to leave. Can't. Elevator's broken, remember? Tessa made her way to the windows, pressing one hand against the glass. The city spread out below like a glittering circuit board, though I'll admit, the view almost makes up for the complete lack of personality. I have personality. Do you? I hadn't noticed under all the expensive tailoring and practiced indifference, says the woman who's been nothing but hostile since the moment we met. You hit me with your car. You walked into traffic. They glared at each other across the pristine living room, and Tessa felt that same electric charge from yesterday, the one she absolutely was not going to analyze or think about or acknowledge in any way. Jordan broke first, running a hand through his dark hair in a gesture that seemed uncharacteristically frustrated. The guest room is upstairs, second floor, I'll show you. The guest room was, predictably, as immaculate as the rest of the penthouse. King-sized bed with crisp white linens, matching nightstands, a dresser that looked like it had never held actual clothes. The ensuite bathroom featured the promised soaking tub, along with a shower large enough to host a small party. This is bigger than my entire apartment, Tessa said, running her hand along the marble countertop. I'll take that as a compliment. It wasn't meant as one. Who needs this much bathroom? Someone who appreciates space and privacy. Jordan set her suitcase on the luggage rack. Of course he had a luggage rack. Towels are in the cabinet. Toiletries in the drawer if you need anything. My room is on the third floor, so you won't be disturbed. Third floor, right, because 2 floors of separation might not be enough. I'm trying to be respectful of your space. Or avoiding me. Can't it be both? Despite herself, Tessa felt her lips twitch. Fair enough. Jordan moved toward the door, then paused. There's a study on this floor as well. Internet password is written on the desk. Help yourself. Kitchen is fully stocked, though I should warn you, I'm not much of a cook. Shocking. I figured you'd have that color-coded too. Actually, the pantry is organized alphabetically. She stared at him. You're joking. Why would I joke about efficient organization? Oh my God, you're serious. It makes finding ingredients much faster. It makes you a psychopath. I prefer methodical. I prefer unhinged, but to each their own. Something that might have been a smile flickered across his face before he caught it. Get some rest. Doctor's orders. After he left, Tessa sat on the edge of the bed, which was, annoyingly, the most comfortable thing she'd ever sat on, and looked around at the aggressively neutral room. What had she gotten herself into? By the next morning, Tessa had transformed the guest room into what Jordan could only describe as a disaster zone. He'd come downstairs to check on her, purely out of obligation, not concern, and stopped dead in the doorway. Papers covered every surface. Dictionaries lay open on the bed, the desk, even the floor. Coffee mugs occupied 3 different locations, all at varying levels of emptiness. Her laptop was propped on a stack of books, power cords snaking across the floor like a hazard waiting to happen. And in the center of it all, Tessa sat cross-legged on the bed, medical boot propped on a pillow, typing furiously with her hair piled in a messy bun on top of her head. What happened here? Jordan asked, unable to keep the horror from his voice. Tessa looked up, blinking as if she'd forgotten other people existed. What? This chaos. He gestured broadly. Did a tornado hit? This is called working. You should try it sometime. I run a multi-million-dollar aviation company. From behind a desk, pressing buttons and looking stern in meetings. She went back to typing. I actually have to think, which requires spreading out. Spreading out is one thing. This looks like a bomb went off in a library. Don't be dramatic. There are coffee mugs everywhere. 3. There are 3 coffee mugs. That's not everywhere. It's 3 more than necessary. Why can't you put them in the kitchen when you're done? Because I'm not done. I'm still drinking from them. Jordan picked up the nearest mug and peered inside. This one is empty. I might want more coffee later. Then you can get a fresh cup. But this one is already here. That's not how cups work. She finally looked up at him fully, one eyebrow raised. Are we seriously arguing about coffee mugs right now? Yes, because apparently I'm living with someone who treats basic hygiene and organization like optional suggestions. Living with? It's been 12 hours. Exactly. How much damage can you do in a week? Oh, you haven't seen anything yet, Ellis. She turned back to her laptop, dismissing him entirely. Close the door on your way out. Some of us have actual deadlines. Jordan opened his mouth to respond, realized he had no good comeback, and retreated to his own floor in defeat. This was going to be the longest week of his life. That evening, Jordan returned from the office to find Tessa in the kitchen, attempting to cook dinner while balancing on one foot. She'd found his pasta pot, which she'd left on the counter instead of putting it away naturally, and was in the process of dumping an entire box of spaghetti into boiling water. "Do you need help?" he asked, setting his briefcase down. "Nope. I'm perfectly capable of making pasta. While injured, it's my ankle, not my hands. You're hopping. Observant. Is this what they teach you in business school?" Jordan loosened his tie, watching as she nearly knocked over a jar of sauce while reaching for a spoon. I don't need your help. You're going to hurt yourself. I'm fine. You're clearly not. The spoon clattered to the floor. Tessa wobbled, tried to catch herself, and would have fallen if Jordan hadn't crossed the kitchen in 3 quick strides and caught her around the waist. For a moment, they were frozen. His hand spanned her waist easily, warm through the thin fabric of her t-shirt. She was pressed against his chest, close enough that he could smell her shampoo, something floral and completely at odds with her prickly personality. Their eyes met, held. "Thanks," she said quietly, her voice lacking its usual sharp edge. "You're welcome." He should let go. He should definitely let go. He didn't. The water on the stove chose that moment to boil over, hissing dramatically and breaking the spell. They jumped apart like teenagers caught by their parents. Tessa gestured vaguely at the stove. "Right, and Jordan had no idea what he'd do, but it needed to be far away from whatever that was. "I'll be upstairs." "Sure, good, great." "Great," he echoed. He practically fled to the 3rd floor, his heart pounding in a way that had nothing to do with the stairs. This was going to be a problem, a very big problem. Tessa Franklin had never considered herself a particularly messy person. Disorganized, maybe, creatively chaotic, certainly, but she'd lived alone for years without anyone complaining about her habits. Jordan Ellis, however, seemed to take personal offense to every aspect of her existence. "Is there a reason you've left translation notes on the coffee table?" he asked on day 3, standing in the living room with his arms crossed like a disappointed father. Tessa didn't look up from her laptop. "Yes, the reason is that I was working there. But you're not working there now." Astute observation. "So you can move them." "I could. Or, and hear me out, you could relax your death grip on controlling every molecule in this penthouse and let me work in peace." His jaw did that twitching thing again. Tessa had started keeping a mental tally of how often she could make it happen. Current count, 12 times in 3 days. She was going for 20 by the end of the week. "I'm not controlling. You reorganized my dictionary stack yesterday. They were crooked. They were stacked. Poorly. Oh my God." Tessa closed her laptop with more force than necessary. "Do you hear yourself? You reorganized someone else's dictionaries because they offended your aesthetic sensibilities. I was trying to help by imposing your obsessive need for order on my work materials. It's not obsessive. You labeled the spice rack, Jordan, so I can find things quickly. Who can't find salt? Someone who doesn't have a proper organizational system." They were standing now, facing each other across the coffee table like opponents in a very low-stakes boxing match. Jordan's hair was slightly mussed from running his hands through it, something he did when frustrated, which was often around her. His tie was loosened, his shirt sleeves rolled up to his elbows, and Tessa definitely did not notice how the position highlighted the muscles in his forearms. Definitely not. "You're impossible," she said, but there was less heat in her voice than there should have been. "Says the woman who uses coffee mugs as decorative accessories. That was one time. It was this morning. I was using them. All 4 of them. Maybe." Jordan shook his head, but she caught something that looked suspiciously like amusement in his dark eyes. "You're going to drive me insane. Consider it payback for the vehicular assault. It wasn't assault, it was an accident. Potato. That's not how that expression applies here. Isn't it, though?" He opened his mouth, closed it, and turned away with a sound that might have been a laugh, or might have been a groan. "I need coffee." "Do you want some?" "Only if you promise not to judge how many cups I use." I make no such promises, but when he returned 5 minutes later, he brought her a steaming mug, prepared exactly how she liked it, which meant he'd been paying attention, and set it carefully on a coaster beside her laptop. "Thank you," she said, surprised by the gesture. "Don't read into it. I just don't want water rings on my table." "Of course. How silly of me." He settled into the chair across from her, his own coffee in hand, and pulled out his tablet to review what appeared to be contracts. They worked in comfortable silence for nearly an hour, before Tessa spoke again. "Can I ask you something?" Jordan looked up, eyebrows raised. "That depends on the something. Why aviation? Of all the industries you could have gone into?" He seemed surprised by the question. "My grandfather was a pilot. Commercial airlines back when that was still considered glamorous. He used to tell me stories about flying to different cities, seeing the world from above. Made it sound like freedom." There was something in his voice, something softer than his usual sharp tone, that made Tessa set down her own work. "Did you ever want to be a pilot yourself?" "For about 5 minutes when I was 12. Then I realized I preferred the business side. Strategy, logistics, making sure things run smoothly." He paused. "What about you? Why translation?" "My mother was Brazilian. She moved here when she married my dad, and she always said that translation was more than just words. It was about connecting people, building bridges between cultures." Tessa smiled at the memory. "I like the idea of being a bridge. That's actually kind of beautiful. Don't sound so surprised. I can occasionally be profound. Between leaving coffee mugs everywhere and arguing about organizational systems? I'm multi-talented." This time Jordan definitely smiled. It transformed his entire face, softening the sharp edges and making him look younger, more approachable. Tessa felt something flutter in her chest and firmly told it to stop. "I should get back to work," she said quickly. "This contract won't translate itself." "Right, of course." But neither of them moved. They sat there, coffee growing cold, laptops forgotten, just looking at each other across the pristine coffee table that was rapidly becoming less pristine by the day. Jordan's phone buzzed, shattering the moment. He glanced at it, frowned, and stood. "I need to take this. It's Tokyo." "At this hour?" "Time zones are a conspiracy designed to ruin sleep schedules." He headed toward his study, already answering the call in what sounded like very capable Japanese. Tessa stared after him. Great. So he spoke Japanese. Because of course he did. The arrogant, organized, infuriating man also had to be multilingual and look good in rolled-up shirt sleeves. This was definitely going to be a problem. Later that night, Tessa emerged from her room in search of a midnight snack and found Jordan in the kitchen, tie completely removed now, dress shirt unbuttoned at the collar, making what appeared to be a very elaborate sandwich. "Can't sleep?" she asked, making him jump. "Don't sneak up on people." "I was walking normally. You're just jumpy." She hopped over to the counter, settling onto one of the bar stools. "What's the occasion for the gourmet midnight snack?" "I'm hungry. That's generally the occasion for eating." "Touchy. Did the Tokyo call go badly?" "It went fine. They're just demanding." He added another layer to his sandwich with the precision of someone building a house of cards. "They want specifications on the new fleet by Friday. And you can't do that." "I can. I just prefer not to work on unrealistic timelines." He glanced at her. "You should be sleeping. Doctor said rest." "I rested all day. Now I'm hungry." She eyed his sandwich. "That looks good. Make your own." "But yours looks better." "That's because I'm making it correctly. There's a correct way to make a sandwich. Obviously. Layer distribution, condiment ratio, structural integrity." Tessa burst out laughing. "Did you just say structural integrity about a sandwich?" Jordan's ears turned slightly pink. "Shut up. Oh my God, you're serious. You've engineered your sandwich." "I prefer my food to not fall apart when I eat it, yes. This explains so much about you." "What's that supposed to mean?" "That you probably have a spreadsheet for your daily routine." "I have a system." "System? You have a system." Tessa was laughing so hard now that she had to hold onto the counter. "Do you also have a system for breathing? For blinking?" "You're mocking me." "I really, really am." He should have been annoyed. He definitely should have been annoyed. Instead, watching her laugh, really laugh, with her whole body eyes crinkling at the corners, Jordan found himself smiling despite himself. "Fine," he said, cutting his carefully constructed sandwich in half. "Since you're so entertained by my methods, you can share the results." Tessa stopped laughing. looking at the sandwich half he was offering. Really? Don't make a big deal out of it. She took it carefully, like it might explode. Took a bite. Her eyes widened. Oh, okay. That's actually really good. Structural integrity, he said smugly. I hate that you're right. Get used to disappointment. They ate in companionable silence, standing on opposite sides of the kitchen island like two fighters who'd called a temporary truce. When Tessa reached for a napkin, her hand brushed his. Neither of them pulled away as quickly as they should have. "Good night, Jordan," she said finally, taking her last bite of sandwich with her. "Good night, Tessa." He watched her go, medical boot clunking softly against the hardwood, and realized with growing alarm that he was starting to enjoy having her here, which was absolutely, definitely not part of the plan. The physical therapist Jordan had hired arrived on Thursday morning with the enthusiasm of someone who genuinely loved their job. Her name was Patricia. She was in her 50s, and she took one look at Tessa's setup in the guest room and laughed. "Well, at least you're keeping the ankle elevated," Patricia said, gesturing to where Tessa had propped her foot on a stack of German dictionaries. "Multitasking," Tessa replied. "The dictionaries were just the right height." "She's lying," Jordan said from the doorway. "She ran out of pillows because she's using them all as back support while she works." "Nobody asked you, Ellis. I live here. Temporarily. I live here temporarily." Patricia looked between them with barely concealed amusement. "Should I come back when you two are done flirting?" "We're not." They both started simultaneously, then stopped, glaring at each other. "Right," Patricia said, her smile widening. "Not flirting, got it. Now let's see this ankle." The therapy session was equal parts painful and embarrassing. Tessa had to admit, though only to herself, that her ankle hurt more than she'd been letting on. Patricia put her through a series of exercises that made her wince, all while Jordan hovered in the doorway like an anxious parent. "You can leave," Tessa said through gritted teeth as Patricia manipulated her foot. "I'm not going to break. I'm supervising. You're lurking. I prefer observing from a strategic position." "You would." Patricia laughed. "You two sound like an old married couple." The silence that followed was deafening. "We're not," Tessa started. "She's just staying here temporarily because," Jordan tried. "He hit me with his car and—" "I didn't hit you, you walked into—" "Oh my God, here we go again." Patricia held up her hands. Okay. Not married. Noted. But whatever this is, it's entertaining." She stood, packing up her equipment. "Keep doing these exercises 3 times a day. The ankle is healing well, but you need to stay consistent. I'll be back Monday to check your progress." After she left, Tessa and Jordan stood in awkward silence. "Well," Tessa said finally, "that was mortifying. Completely. We don't sound like a married couple." "Absolutely not. We just argue. That's different. Totally different." Another beat of silence. "Do you want lunch?" Jordan asked abruptly. "I was going to order from that Italian place on 5th. "Are you asking me to have lunch with you?" "I'm asking if you want food. Don't make it weird." "You're making it weird by acting like asking is weird." "I'm not—" He stopped, closed his eyes briefly. "Do you want Italian food or not?" "Yes. The chicken parmigiana and garlic bread." "Obviously garlic bread." "What's that supposed to mean?" "You've eaten garlic bread at every meal for the past 3 days. It's good garlic bread. I'm not arguing with that." "Then why bring it up?" "Because apparently I enjoy suffering." Tessa couldn't help it. She laughed. And after a moment, Jordan's mouth quirked up at the corner in what might have been the beginning of a smile. "You're impossible," he muttered, but there was no heat in it. "Right back at you, Ellis." The food arrived 40 minutes later, and they ended up eating on the terrace because it was one of those rare, perfect afternoons where the weather was neither too hot nor too cold. Jordan had carried her lunch out for her, along with a cushion for her foot, which was surprisingly thoughtful for someone who spent most of his time complaining about her organizational habits. "This view really is incredible," Tessa admitted, looking out over the city skyline. "Even if the interior decorating could use some personality." "There's personality. It's called minimalist sophistication. It's called, I'm afraid of color and joy. I have color. There's gray and darker gray. And that accent wall that's almost charcoal. Oh, you're right, my mistake. Such a vibrant rainbow." Jordan took a bite of his pasta, and Tessa could swear she saw him fighting a smile. "You know, Most people would be grateful for luxury accommodations. I am grateful. I'm just also honest about the fact that this place looks like it was decorated by someone who thinks fun is a four-letter word. Fun is a four-letter word. You know what I mean. Unfortunately, I do. Which says disturbing things about how well I'm starting to understand you. Tessa paused mid-bite. Is that a good thing or a bad thing? I haven't decided yet. They ate in silence for a moment, and Tessa found herself studying him when she thought he wasn't looking. He'd changed from his suit into dark jeans and a navy Henley that should have made him look casual, but somehow still looked expensive. His hair was slightly messy from the breeze, and he had reading glasses perched on his nose that she'd never seen before. What? He asked without looking up. Nothing. You're staring. I'm observing. There's a difference. Where have I heard that before? Now he did look at her, one eyebrow raised, and Tessa felt her cheeks warm. I didn't know you wore glasses. Only for reading. They're progressive lenses. Very boring. They're not boring. No? No. They make you look... She stopped herself. Never mind. Make me look what? There was something in his voice now, something lower and more dangerous than his usual clipped tone. Nothing. Forget it. Tessa. Fine. They make you look less like a corporate robot and more like an actual human being. Happy? He set down his fork slowly. That might be the nicest thing you've ever said to me. Don't let it go to your head. Too late. They held each other's gaze for a moment too long, and Tessa felt that familiar flutter in her chest that she was becoming increasingly bad at ignoring. Jordan seemed to feel it too, because he cleared his throat and looked away first. So, he said, his voice carefully neutral, how's the Hoffman contract coming? Almost done. I should have it finished by tomorrow afternoon. That's impressive. It was what? 70 pages. 83, actually. Plus appendices. She shrugged. It's not that complicated once you understand the technical terminology. You say that like translating highly specialized aviation contracts is something everyone can do. Well, not everyone, but it's my job. A job you're clearly very good at. Tessa looked at him in surprise. Was that a compliment? Don't let it go to your head. She grinned. Too late. Jordan shook his head, but he was smiling, really smiling, and Tessa felt something warm settle in her chest. This was dangerous territory. Getting comfortable with him, starting to enjoy his company, looking forward to their verbal sparring sessions instead of dreading them. Her phone rang, shattering the moment. She glanced at the screen and felt her stomach drop. Excuse me, she said, standing awkwardly and hobbling toward the door. I need to take this. Jordan watched her go, noting the sudden tension in her shoulders. He told himself it was none of his business. That whoever was calling her was her concern, not his. He also told himself he wasn't straining to hear her conversation through the open terrace door. Both were lies. David, I already told you. Tessa's voice drifted out, frustrated. No, that's not... We broke up 6 months ago. You don't get to... Jordan's jaw tightened. So, an ex-boyfriend. I don't care if you've had time to think, Tessa continued. The answer is still no. I'm not interested in trying again. Yes, I'm sure. Because I've moved on. Jordan stood, collecting their plates with more force than necessary. It was absolutely none of his business if Tessa had an ex-boyfriend who was apparently trying to get back together with her. None at all. He was still furious about it. When Tessa came back outside, she looked irritated and tired. Sorry about that. Ex-boyfriend? How did you... Never mind. Yes. He's decided now that 6 months have passed. He's ready to work on things. She made air quotes with obvious disdain, as if that's how relationships work. What things? Does it matter? We're over. I told him that months ago, and I just told him again. She sank back into her chair. Why do men do that? Wait until you've completely moved on and then suddenly decide they made a mistake. Jordan wanted to say something supportive and neutral. Instead, what came out was, if he was stupid enough to let you go in the first place, he doesn't deserve a second chance. Tessa's eyes widened. That's surprisingly sweet. Don't get used to it. Wouldn't dream of it. But she was smiling now, soft and genuine, and Jordan felt that dangerous warmth again. This was a problem, a very big problem, and he was starting not to care. Friday evening arrived with an unexpected complication. Jordan's business dinner had been moved to his penthouse at the last minute due to a double booking at the restaurant. He'd apologized profusely to Tessa, promising to keep his guests confined to the dining room on the main floor. "It's fine," Tessa had said, though she was eyeing her comfortable pajamas with longing. "It's your home. You're allowed to have people over. Just maybe stay upstairs. These investors are important and you don't want them knowing you have a woman living here." "That's not—" He stopped. "Okay, yes. That's exactly it. They're conservative and explanations would be complicated. Say no more, I'll be invisible," she mimed, zipping her lips. Jordan looked skeptical but grateful. The investors arrived at 7 sharp, 3 men in expensive suits who looked like they'd never had a spontaneous thought in their lives. Perfect for Jordan, Tessa thought uncharitably from her position at the top of the stairs. She'd been on her way to get water when they arrived and had frozen, not wanting to be seen. She watched as Jordan transformed into his corporate persona, all smooth confidence and practiced charm. It was fascinating and slightly unsettling to see him this way. Professional, controlled. Nothing like the man who'd argued with her about coffee mugs that morning. "The Meridian acquisition will position us perfectly for the Asian expansion," Jordan was saying, leading them toward the dining room. "I've prepared a full analysis of the market potential." His voice faded as they moved out of sight. Tessa released a breath she hadn't realized she was holding and started down the stairs. She'd just get her water and retreat back to... The doorbell rang. Tessa froze. Then, because she was closer to the door than anyone else, and because she was apparently incapable of making good decisions, she answered it. A woman stood in the hallway, late 50s, perfectly coiffed silver hair, wearing pearls, and a knowing smile. "Oh, you must be the girlfriend." "I'm the good what?" "Jordan's girlfriend, he's mentioned you." The woman swept past Tessa into the penthouse with the confidence of someone who belonged there. "I'm Margot Ellis, Jordan's mother." Of course she was. "Mrs. Ellis, I'm not—" "Call me Margot, dear. Mrs. Ellis makes me feel ancient." She was looking around the penthouse with sharp, assessing eyes. "My son said he was having a business dinner, but he failed to mention you'd be here." "How delightful." I really should clarify, but Margot was already heading toward the dining room, calling out, "Jordan, why didn't you tell me you had company?" Tessa hobbled after her, medical boot clunking, her heart somewhere in the vicinity of her throat. This was bad. This was very, very bad. Jordan's face when he saw his mother was a masterpiece of barely controlled panic. His eyes flickered to Tessa, then back to Margot, then to his investors, who were now looking between the 2 women with interest. "Mother," he said, his voice impressively steady, "what are you doing here?" "I was in the neighborhood and thought I'd stop by, and imagine my surprise when your lovely girlfriend answers the door." Margot beamed at Tessa. "Though you didn't mention she was injured, darling. What happened?" The investors were definitely paying attention now. One of them, Harrison something Tessa remembered from the introductions she'd overheard, was smiling. "Girlfriend? Jordan? You didn't tell us you were seeing anyone." "I'm not," Jordan started. "We're not," Tessa tried. "She's—" Jordan attempted again. "I'm his—" Tessa's mind went blank. They looked at each other in mutual horror. "Roommate," Tessa finally blurted. "Physical therapist," Jordan said at the exact same moment. Margot's perfectly shaped eyebrows rose. "Which is it?" "Both," they said together, then winced. "She's my physical therapist who's also temporarily staying here," Jordan said quickly. "For medical supervision," Tessa added, "because I hit her with my car." The silence that followed could have been cut with a knife. Harrison started laughing. "You hit her with your car and she moved in. That's either the beginning of a lawsuit or a love story." "Definitely not a love story," Tessa said quickly. "Absolutely not," Jordan agreed. "Of course not," Margot said, but her smile suggested she believed otherwise. "Well, since we're all here, why don't you join us for dinner, dear? I'd love to hear more about your physical therapy arrangement." "Oh, I couldn't possibly." "I insist." Margot's tone was pleasant but firm. Jordan set another place at the table. Jordan looked like he wanted the earth to swallow him whole. "Mother, Jordan." Margot's smile never wavered, but something in her voice made it clear this wasn't a request. which is how Tessa found herself seated at Jordan's formal dining table in yoga pants and an oversized cardigan, surrounded by investors in $1,000 suits and Jordan's terrifyingly perceptive mother, while a catering service brought out course after course of food she couldn't even pronounce. "So, Tessa," Margot said, delicately cutting her salmon, "tell me about yourself. What do you do when you're not recovering from automotive incidents?" Despite the absurdity of the situation, Tessa couldn't help but laugh. "I'm a translator, 6 languages, specializing in technical and legal documents." "How impressive! Jordan, did you know she was multilingual?" "Yes, Mother. And she's quite beautiful too. Don't you think so, Jordan?" Jordan choked on his wine. Tessa helpfully patted him on the back, perhaps harder than strictly necessary. "I think," Jordan managed when he could breathe again, "we should focus on the business discussion." "Oh, business," Margot waved a hand dismissively. "These gentlemen didn't come here just to talk about airplanes. They want to know about you, Jordan, your life, and clearly," she gestured to Tessa, "there's more happening in your life than you've been sharing." "There's really not," Tessa interjected. "This is a purely temporary arrangement. Very professional." "Is that why you're wearing his sweatshirt?" Margot asked innocently. Tessa looked down. She was indeed wearing a Columbia University sweatshirt that was 3 sizes too big, and definitely not hers. When had she even grabbed this? It was cold. My son's penthouse is always precisely 72 degrees. I run cold. Apparently. Margot's smile was knowing. "Jordan, dear, you should be more attentive to your guests' comfort." Jordan looked like he was contemplating throwing himself off the terrace. Tessa sympathized. Harrison was enjoying this immensely. "So how long have you been staying here, Tessa?" 5 days. "And how much longer?" "Another 2 or 3 days, probably. Once my ankle is fully healed." "And then?" "Then I go back to my apartment and we never have to see each other again," Tessa said firmly. "Speak for yourself," Jordan muttered, so quietly only she heard it. She turned to look at him, surprised, but he was studiously focused on his plate. The dinner continued in that vein, Margot asking pointed questions, the investors watching with barely concealed amusement, Jordan looking increasingly uncomfortable, and Tessa trying to maintain the fiction that this was a purely practical arrangement while wearing his sweatshirt and sitting at his table like she belonged there. When dessert finally arrived, some kind of elaborate chocolate creation that probably cost more than Tessa's monthly grocery budget, Margot announced she needed to leave for another engagement. "Walk me out, Jordan," she commanded. Jordan stood obediently. "Of course, Tessa, could you entertain your investors?" "Sure. Why not? This evening can't get any weirder." But she smiled to show she was joking. The investors actually seemed charmed by her. Harrison asked about her work, genuinely interested in the translation process. Another man, Kenneth, told a funny story about a mistranslation disaster at his company's Tokyo office. They were in the middle of laughing when Jordan returned, looking shell-shocked. "Everything all right?" Tessa asked. "Fine. Perfectly fine." But his jaw was tight, and she knew that look by now. Something had rattled him. The investors left shortly after, and suddenly it was just Jordan and Tessa in the too quiet penthouse, surrounded by the detritus of the dinner party. "I'm sorry about that," Jordan said, running a hand through his hair. "My mother is persistent. She's terrifying." "That too. What did she say to you?" Jordan was quiet for a long moment. "She asked when I was going to stop pretending I don't have feelings for you." Tessa's heart stuttered. "And what did you say?" "I told her she was being ridiculous." He still wouldn't look at her. "That this is a temporary arrangement. That you're leaving in a few days." "Right, of course." "Tessa, it's fine. We both know this is temporary." She stood, testing her ankle. It barely hurt anymore. "I should probably go finish some work. It's almost 10. I'm on a deadline." "You're always on a deadline." "Hazard of the profession." She moved toward the stairs, then paused. "For what it's worth, your mother seems nice, even if she is slightly terrifying. She liked you." "How could you tell?" "She stayed for the whole meal. Usually she invents an excuse to leave after 20 minutes at my business dinners." Finally, he looked at her, and something in his dark eyes made her breath catch. "She said you light up the room. Your mother has questionable judgment." "Does she?" They stood there, the length of the living room between them, and Tessa felt the weight of all the things they weren't saying. "Good night, Jordan." "Good night, Tessa." She made it halfway up the stairs before she heard him call her name. "Yeah? Keep the sweatshirt. It looks better on you anyway." Tessa gripped the railing, willing her heart to slow down. "Still not your type, Ellis." "Right. Of course not." But they both knew it was a lie. Saturday morning dawned bright and unseasonably warm. Tessa woke to the sound of Jordan cursing creatively in what sounded like 3 different languages from somewhere below her room. She found him in the kitchen, staring at his espresso machine like it had personally betrayed him. He was wearing athletic shorts and a t-shirt, the most casual she'd ever seen him, and his hair was sticking up in about 5 different directions. It was unfairly endearing. "Coffee machine broken?" she asked, leaning against the doorframe. He jumped, spinning around. "How long have you been standing there?" "Long enough to hear you insult that poor machine's entire ancestry in Italian." "It's not working." "Have you tried turning it off and on again?" "I'm not an idiot." "Debatable." She limped over, her ankle really was much better, and examined the machine. "Did you descale it?" What? Descale? You know, remove the mineral buildup? You're supposed to do it every few months." Jordan looked at her like she'd spoken in ancient Sumerian. "How do you know that?" "Because I read the manual when I buy expensive appliances." She opened a cabinet, found the descaling solution exactly where such things would be in Jordan's organized kitchen, and held it up. You use this. I've had that machine for 2 years. And you've never descaled it?" "I didn't know I was supposed to." "Oh my God." Tessa couldn't help laughing. The great Jordan Ellis, who organizes his life down to the minute, who alphabetizes his pantry and color codes his closet, doesn't read appliance manuals. "I have people who—" He stopped. "Okay, that sounds terrible." "It really does. I was going to say, I have a service that comes quarterly to maintain things. They must have forgotten." "Or you forgot to tell them about the espresso machine." Tessa started running the descaling cycle, the machine whirring to life. "There, give it 20 minutes. Jordan slumped against the counter, looking genuinely distressed. "I haven't had coffee yet," I noticed. "I don't function without coffee." "I'm aware. You're like a hostile robot running on low battery." "That's not—" He stopped, seeming to realize she was right. "Is it that obvious?" "Jordan, yesterday you reorganized the silverware drawer because one fork was facing the wrong direction, and that was after coffee." He groaned, covering his face with his hands. "I'm insufferable, aren't I?" "Completely." She patted his shoulder. "But I've got instant coffee in my room, emergency backup supply." He looked at her like she'd offered him a kidney. "You'd share your coffee?" "Don't make it weird. Come on." They ended up on the terrace, Jordan's favorite spot, and increasingly Tessa's too, with mugs of instant coffee that Jordan claimed was barely drinkable, but drank gratefully anyway. The city stretched out below them, Saturday morning quiet, settling over the streets. "Can I ask you something?" Tessa said after a comfortable silence. "Depends on the question." "Why aviation? You mentioned your grandfather yesterday, but there's got to be more to it than family stories." Jordan was quiet for a long moment, turning his mug in his hands. "Control, I guess. Aviation is all about control. Flight paths, maintenance schedules, safety protocols. Everything has a system, a procedure. If you follow the rules, things work. Planes stay in the air. People get where they need to go safely. And if you don't follow the rules, things fall apart." He said it simply, matter of fact, but Tessa heard something underneath. Something that explained a lot about why he needed his life organized just so. "What happened?" she asked gently. "My father. He was a commercial real estate developer. Took risks, cut corners, ignored regulations he thought were unnecessary." Jordan's jaw tightened. "One of his buildings had faulty wiring. Fire broke out. 3 people died." "Oh, Jordan." "He went to prison for negligent homicide. Served 8 years. Got out when I was 16. He took a long drink of coffee. "That's when I decided I'd do the opposite of everything he did. Follow every rule, maintain control. Never let chaos dictate outcomes." Tessa understood now. The obsessive organization, the need for everything to have its place, the way he reacted to her creative disorder like it was a personal threat. "That's why my mess drives you crazy." "It's not—" He stopped. "Okay, yes. Disorder makes me twitchy. I know it's irrational. It's not irrational. It's trauma. She reached over and squeezed his hand without thinking. But Jordan, you're not your father. You could never be that careless with people's safety. He looked down at their joined hands, then up at her face. You really believe that? I've seen you triple-check that my ankle is elevated properly. You hired a physical therapist even though I didn't ask for one. You brought me descaling solution even though you were desperate for caffeine. She smiled. You care. Sometimes too much. But that's not a flaw. Something shifted in his expression, softened, opened. How do you do that? Do what? Make me feel like maybe I'm not completely dysfunctional. Oh, you're definitely dysfunctional, but in a weirdly endearing way. He laughed, really laughed, and the sound did dangerous things to Tessa's heart. Your turn, he said. What's your damage? Excuse me? Everyone has something. What's yours? Tessa considered deflecting, then decided he'd earned honesty. My mom died when I was 19. Brain aneurysm. 1 minute she was there, the next she was gone. No warning, no goodbye, just gone. Tessa, I'm sorry. It's been 10 years, but it still feels sudden sometimes, like I'm waiting for her to walk back in. She took a shaky breath. That's why I became a translator. It was her dream, but she never got to pursue it. So I'm doing it for both of us, I guess. That's beautiful. That's complicated. She attempted a smile. I love the work, but sometimes I wonder if I'm doing it because I want to or because I feel like I have to make her sacrifice mean something. What sacrifice? She gave up everything to move here with my dad, her family, her career, her language, and then she had me, and then she died before she could... Tessa's voice cracked. Before she could see that it was worth it. Jordan did something unexpected. He shifted closer and pulled her into a hug. Not a polite pat, but a real embrace, his arms solid and warm around her. Tessa let herself lean into it, breathing in his scent. Still that cedar and sandalwood, even without the cologne. It was worth it, he said quietly. You're worth it. She would see that. Tessa felt tears prick her eyes and blinked them away furiously. This is too heavy for Saturday morning coffee. Probably. But he didn't let go right away, and neither did she. When they finally separated, there was a new understanding between them. The verbal sparring would continue. Tessa was sure of that. But it was different now. Deeper. More real. Your espresso machine should be ready, she said, clearing her throat. Right. Yes, coffee. But he didn't move. Jordan? Yeah? Thank you for sharing that. About your dad. Thank you for not judging me for being a control freak. Oh, I still judge you. Just with more context now. He smiled. Fair enough. They went inside, and Jordan made proper espresso for both of them. And somehow they ended up spending the entire morning together, watching a terrible movie on the couch, arguing about the plot holes, laughing at the bad dialogue. Tessa's foot ended up tucked under Jordan's thigh at some point, and neither of them acknowledged it. It felt dangerously like something more than a temporary arrangement. It felt like home. Saasyan Darakil of that evening, Tessa's best friend Maya called for their weekly video chat. Tessa took it in her room, propping her laptop on the bed. Okay, spill, Maya demanded the moment her face appeared on screen. You've been weirdly quiet this week. I've been busy. You're always busy, this is different. Maya's eyes narrowed. Wait, are you somewhere fancy? That's not your apartment. Long story. I have time. So Tessa explained. The accident, the penthouse, Jordan's proposal, the week of living together and constant bickering. She edited out the part where she was starting to maybe possibly have feelings for him. That was too complicated to explain. Maya listened with increasing delight. Let me get this straight. He hit you with his car and now you're living in his penthouse? Temporarily. This is literally the plot of a romance novel. It's not like that. What's he like? Infuriating. Controlling. Has opinions about everything from coffee cup placement to the structural integrity of sandwiches. And? And what? Tessa, I've known you for 12 years. I can tell when you're leaving something out. Tessa sighed. He's also thoughtful, in unexpected ways. And we had this conversation this morning about our families and he's been through some stuff and... Oh my God, you like him. I don't. You absolutely do. Your voice gets all soft when you talk about him. It does not. It definitely does. So what does he look like? That's irrelevant. Which means he's hot. Show me. Maya, show me or I'm calling your dad and telling him you're shacking up with a stranger. That's blackmail. I'm aware. Phone. Camera. Now. Grumbling, Tessa grabbed her phone and crept downstairs. Jordan was in his study on the main floor, visible through the glass doors, working on his laptop. She took a quick photo and scurried back upstairs. Maya's reaction when she saw the picture was immediate. Holy hell. Don't. Tessa Franklin, that is a very attractive man. I'm aware. And you're living with him. Temporarily. In his penthouse. Yes. Wearing what I'm betting is his sweatshirt right now. Tessa looked down at the Columbia sweatshirt she'd never actually taken off. Maybe. You're falling for him. I'm not. You are. And that terrifies you. The accuracy of that statement stole Tessa's breath. Even if I was, which I'm not, it doesn't matter. I'm leaving in 2 days. This isn't real life, it's just a weird bubble that will pop the moment I go back to my apartment. Or, Maya said gently, it could be the beginning of something. You're a hopeless romantic, and you're a hopeless pessimist. One of us has to balance the other out. Maya leaned closer to her camera. Just promise me you won't run away from this because you're scared. I'm not scared. Tessa. Fine. Maybe I'm a little scared. That's normal. He's the first guy you've been interested in since David. I'm not interested in... Stop lying to me and definitely stop lying to yourself. Maya's expression softened. You deserve to be happy. Your mum would want that. After they hung up, Tessa sat with her laptop for a long time, staring at nothing in particular. Maya was right. She was scared. Scared of getting hurt. Scared of wanting something that wasn't permanent. Scared of the way Jordan made her feel like maybe she could let someone in again. She was also running out of time. 2 more days in this penthouse. 2 more days of morning coffee and evening debates and the slowly increasing tension that made her skin feel too tight whenever he was near. 2 more days, and then what? She didn't have an answer, and that terrified her most of all. Sunday morning, Tessa woke with a sense of impending doom. Tomorrow was Monday, her official departure date. Patricia had cleared her ankle at Friday's session, declaring it healed enough for normal activity. There was no medical reason for her to stay any longer, which meant tonight was her last night in the penthouse. She should have been relieved. She'd get her space back, her independence, her ability to leave coffee mugs wherever she pleased without judgment. Instead, she felt a hollow ache in her chest that had nothing to do with her injury. The smell of bacon drew her downstairs. Jordan was in the kitchen, actually cooking, and the sight was so unexpected that she stopped in the doorway to stare. "You cook?" she asked. He looked up, spatula in hand. "Occasionally, when motivated." "What's the motivation?" "It's your last full day here. Figured I should make an effort." Something warm bloomed in her chest. "That's surprisingly sweet. Don't get used to it." But he was smiling as he plated bacon and eggs. "Come eat before it gets cold." They ate at the kitchen island, shoulders almost touching, neither acknowledging that this was likely their last breakfast together. The silence was companionable but charged, full of things neither of them was saying. "So," Jordan said finally, "back to real life tomorrow." "Yep. My exciting 3rd-floor walk-up with the temperamental elevator. They fixed it? As of yesterday, allegedly. We'll see if it lasts through the week. And your ankle feels okay. Good as new. Patricia did excellent work. You should send her a gift basket or something." "I should send you a gift basket for putting up with me for a week. A week and a half, technically. And yes, you should. Make it a good one. Fancy cheeses, the expensive crackers." Noted. He was looking at her with an expression she couldn't quite read. "Tessa." His phone rang. He glanced at it, frowned, and sent it to voicemail. "You can take that," Tessa said. "It's not important." It rang again, same number. "Jordan?" "Fine," he answered with obvious irritation. "This is Ellis." "Yes, I'm aware of the timeline. No, I haven't forgotten. Look, can we discuss this tomorrow? I'm in the middle of..." He paused, listening, and his expression darkened. "When? How bad?" "All right, give me an hour, I'll be there." He hung up, looking tense and frustrated. "Problem?" Tessa asked. "One of our maintenance hangars had a small fire overnight. Nobody hurt, minimal damage, but I need to go assess the situation and deal with the insurance adjuster." He ran a hand through his hair. "I'm sorry, this is terrible timing." It's your job. Go. But it's your last day. Jordan, go handle your emergency. I'll be here when you get back." She smiled. "I promise not to reorganize your entire pantry out of spite." "That's not funny." "It's a little funny." He grabbed his keys and wallet, then paused at the door. "I'll be back as soon as I can. Take your time. I've got work to catch up on anyway." After he left, the penthouse felt too quiet. Tessa tried to focus on her translations, but her mind kept wandering. This time, tomorrow, she'd be back in her apartment. Alone, which was what she wanted, what she'd always wanted. So why did the thought make her want to cry? She was mid-mental spiral when the doorbell rang. Confused, Jordan had a key and she wasn't expecting anyone. She hobbled to the door and checked the peephole. David. Her ex-boyfriend David was standing in the hallway. "Oh, you have got to be kidding me," she muttered, opening the door but not removing the chain. "How did you get this address?" "Your friend Maya gave it to me." He smiled, that same charming smile that had worked on her once upon a time. "She said you were staying with someone who hit you with his car. Tessa, what's going on? Maya gave you this address?" Tessa made a mental note to murder her best friend later. "Why?" "Because I told her I was worried about you, that I needed to see you." He gestured at the door. "Can I come in?" "No." "Tessa, please, just 5 minutes." Against her better judgment, and because she was too surprised to think of a good reason to refuse, she let him in. David whistled as he entered, taking in the penthouse with obvious appreciation. "Wow, this guy must be loaded. Is this some kind of sugar daddy situation?" "Excuse me." "I'm just saying this is quite an upgrade from your apartment. Makes me wonder what you're doing to earn it." The anger that flooded through Tessa was immediate and fierce. "Get out." "I didn't mean—" "Yes, you did. You came here to—" "What, win me back by insulting me? Great strategy, David." "I'm sorry, that came out wrong." He moved closer and Tessa instinctively stepped back. "I've been thinking about us a lot, about what we had. We had 6 mediocre months and a breakup that should have happened 4 months earlier. That's harsh. That's honest. We weren't right for each other and you know it. But we could try again. We're both older now, more mature." "I'm not interested, David. I've told you this multiple times." "Is it because of this guy? The one who hit you?" "This has nothing to do with Jordan." "So, there is something with Jordan." "I didn't— That's not—" Tessa stopped, frustrated. "My relationship with Jordan is none of your business." "So you admit there's a relationship." "I admit nothing, and you need to leave. Now." David's expression hardened. "You've changed, Tessa. You used to be sweet. Now you're cold." "No, I used to be a doormat. Now I have self-respect. Sorry if that's inconvenient for you." She was ushering him toward the door when it opened, revealing Jordan. He took in the scene. Tessa, clearly upset, a strange man in his penthouse, and his entire demeanor shifted. Suddenly he wasn't Jordan who argued about coffee mugs. He was Jordan Ellis, CEO, all 6 feet plus of intimidating authority. "Who are you?" he asked, his voice dangerously quiet. "David Mitchell." "I'm Tessa's boyfriend." "Ex-boyfriend," Tessa corrected firmly, "who was just leaving." "I'm not leaving until we finish our conversation." Jordan stepped fully into the penthouse, and despite David being reasonably tall himself, he seemed to shrink next to Jordan's presence. "The lady asked you to leave. I suggest you listen. This is between me and Tessa." "Nothing is between you and Tessa. She's told you no, multiple times from what I understand." Jordan crossed his arms. "So here's what's going to happen. You're going to walk out that door. You're going to stop calling her, stop showing up uninvited, stop pretending you have any claim to her time or attention. And if I don't, then we'll have a different kind of conversation, one that involves my attorney and a restraining order." David looked between them, and whatever he saw in Jordan's expression made him back down. "This isn't over, Tessa." "Yes," Jordan said coldly. "It is." After David left, Tessa sank onto the couch, shaking slightly. Jordan crouched in front of her, his hands gentle on her knees. "Are you okay?" he asked, and his voice was soft now, all the hard edges gone. "I'm fine. He's just persistent. That's one word for it. Delusional is another." Jordan's jaw was still tight. "How did he know you were here?" "Maya gave him the address. She thought she was helping." Tessa laughed without humor. "I'm going to kill her." "Get in line." He studied her face. Did he hurt you? No, just said some things. Implied that I was here because... She trailed off, not wanting to repeat it. Jordan's expression darkened. Because what? It doesn't matter. Tessa, tell me. He implied I was with you for your money, like some kind of arrangement. She felt her cheeks burn with humiliation. That son of a... Jordan stood abruptly, pacing. I should go after him, make it very clear that... Jordan, stop. Tessa caught his hand, pulling him back down to sit beside her. It's fine, he's an idiot, I don't care what he thinks. I care. Why? He looked at her for a long moment, and Tessa felt the air between them change. Charge, become almost unbearably heavy. Because, he said quietly, the idea that anyone would think you're with me for any reason other than... He stopped. It's insulting. To both of us. Other than what? Nothing. Forget it. Jordan, I need to make some calls. About the hangar. He stood, putting distance between them. Make sure you're okay. I'm fine. Right. Good. But he didn't move toward his study. Just stood there, hands in his pockets, looking at her like he was trying to memorize her face. What? Tessa asked softly. You're leaving tomorrow. That was always the plan. Right. The plan. He nodded. I should let you get back to work. He disappeared upstairs, and Tessa sat alone in the too-quiet living room, wondering how everything had gotten so complicated. More importantly, wondering why leaving suddenly felt like the worst plan in the world. That evening, Jordan ordered dinner from an upscale Thai restaurant, Tessa's favorite, which he'd somehow remembered from a passing comment 3 days ago. They ate in near silence, the weight of tomorrow's departure hanging between them like fog. I could stay another day, Tessa said suddenly, then immediately wanted to take it back. I mean, if you needed help with anything, the hangar situation or my hangar is fine, and your ankle is healed. Jordan's voice was carefully neutral. There's no reason for you to stay. Right. No reason. She pushed her pad thai around her plate. Just thought I'd offer. Tessa. He stopped, seeming to wrestle with something internal. You should go back to your life. Your real life. This has been an anomaly. An anomaly. A temporary situation due to unusual circumstances. Wow. You really know how to make a girl feel special. That's not what I meant. Then what did you mean? I meant... He set down his fork with more force than necessary. I meant that you have a life, an apartment, a career, friends. You can't just stay here indefinitely playing house with the guy who hit you with his car. Is that what we're doing, playing house? Aren't we? Tessa felt something crack in her chest. I don't know, Jordan, you tell me, because from where I'm sitting, this stopped feeling like a temporary arrangement about 4 days ago. The silence that followed was deafening. I need some air, Jordan said finally, standing abruptly. I'll be on the terrace. After he left, Tessa sat alone at the table, staring at her half-eaten dinner and wondering how everything had gone so wrong so quickly. She should pack, start preparing for tomorrow's departure, create some emotional distance before it hurt even more. Instead, she found herself walking to the terrace. Jordan was leaning against the railing, city lights reflecting off the glass of scotch in his hand. He didn't turn when she approached, but his shoulders tensed. I'm sorry, she said quietly, for pushing. Don't apologize, you're right to push. He took a drink. I'm terrible at this. At what? Feelings, relationships, letting people in. He finally looked at her, and the vulnerability in his dark eyes stole her breath. My ex-fiancé used to say I loved my spreadsheets more than I loved her. She wasn't entirely wrong. You were engaged 5 years ago. Lasted all of 6 months before she realized I was married to my work and she'd always be the mistress. He laughed bitterly. She wanted spontaneity, adventure, someone who could let go of control long enough to just live. I couldn't do that. Couldn't be that. Tessa moved closer, standing beside him at the railing. What was her name? Catherine. She was a photographer, traveled the world for her work, wanted me to come with her, but I always had meetings, deadlines, responsibilities I couldn't leave. He shook his head. She finally gave up. Gave me back the ring and told me to call her when I figured out how to be a human being instead of a machine. You're not a machine. Aren't I? I schedule everything, control everything. Can't even handle someone leaving coffee mugs on my counters without having a minor breakdown. Jordan, you're the first person in 5 years who's made me question whether maybe she was right. Whether maybe I've been living half a life because I'm too scared to risk anything real. He turned to face her fully, and that terrifies me. Because tomorrow you're leaving and I'll go back to my perfectly organized, completely empty existence, and I'll pretend that's what I want. Is it? What you want? No. The word came out raw, honest. But wanting something and being capable of having it are two different things. Tessa felt tears prick her eyes. You're capable of more than you think. Am I? Because right now I want to ask you to stay, and I can't even form the words. Jordan? And even if I could, what would I be asking you to stay for? A guy who can't handle disorder, who works 80-hour weeks, who'll probably disappoint you in 100 different ways because he doesn't know how to do this. Do what? Care about someone more than he cares about maintaining control. The confession hung in the air between them. Tessa's heart was pounding so hard she could hear it in her ears. I received an email yesterday, she said quietly. A job offer. 3 months translating for an international trade conference. Multiple countries, amazing pay, incredible career opportunity. Jordan went very still. You should take it. I haven't decided yet. Why not? It's everything you've been working toward. Because... She stopped, took a breath. Because 3 weeks ago, I would have accepted immediately. No hesitation. It would have been the easiest decision in the world. And now? Now it's complicated. Tessa, you can't turn down opportunities because of... Because of what? You, us? She laughed, but there was no humor in it. We can't even admit there is an us, so why am I letting it affect major life decisions? You shouldn't. You should go. Build your career, see the world, do all the things that matter. And what about you? What matters to you? He set down his glass and turned to face her fully. You want honesty? Always. You matter. This, he gestured between them. Whatever this is matters. These 10 days have been the best and most terrifying of my life. You've turned my world upside down, left chaos in every room you've occupied, and I've never been happier. Tessa felt her breath catch. Jordan, but I also know I'm not good at this, at letting someone in, at being spontaneous and flexible and all the things you deserve. His voice cracked slightly. So yeah, I think you should go. Take the job. Because you deserve someone who can give you everything, not someone who's going to spend your entire relationship trying to organize your sock drawer. I don't want someone who organizes my sock drawer. Yes, you do. Eventually, you'll realize you want someone who can handle your beautiful chaos without trying to fix it. Someone who won't make you feel like you need to change. And you think you'd make me feel that way? I think I'd try very hard not to, and I'd probably fail. He reached out, tucking a strand of hair behind her ear, his fingers lingering against her cheek. You deserve better than my best effort. You deserve easy and certain and uncomplicated. What if I don't want easy? Tessa, what if I want someone who challenges me, who argues with me about coffee mugs and the structural integrity of sandwiches? What if I want someone who looks at me like I'm simultaneously the best and most frustrating thing that's ever happened to him? Jordan's thumb traced her cheekbone. You're definitely the most frustrating thing that's ever happened to me. Good. Because you're insufferable and controlling, and you've made me question everything I thought I knew about myself. They were close now, so close she could feel the warmth of his breath, see the flecks of gold in his dark eyes. His hand was still on her cheek, and her fingers had somehow found their way to his shirt collar. I should let you go, he whispered. You should. This is a terrible idea. The worst. Neither of them moved away. The moment stretched, taut and electric, both of them balanced on the edge of something that would change everything. Jordan's eyes dropped to her lips, and Tessa felt her heart stutter. His phone rang. They jumped apart like teenagers caught by their parents. Jordan grabbed his phone, saw the screen, and swore creatively in Japanese. I have to take this, he said, his voice rough. It's Tokyo, again. Of course it is. He answered the call, stepping away, and Tessa gripped the terrace railing, trying to calm her racing pulse. They'd been about to. She needed air. More air. All the air. Inside, she practically fled to her room, closing the door and leaning against it. Her hands were shaking. Her entire body was shaking. Tomorrow she was leaving. Tomorrow this would all be over. and she still didn't know if that was the right decision or the biggest mistake of her life. Jordan ended his call an hour later and immediately went looking for Tessa. He found her room dark, a sliver of light under the door suggesting she was still awake but clearly not interested in more conversation. He stood outside her door for a full minute, hand raised to knock before walking away. In his own room, he paced, made lists, organized his already organized closet, did everything he could to not think about how close he'd come to kissing her, to asking her to stay, to admitting that the thought of her leaving felt like someone was slowly removing all the oxygen from his lungs. His phone buzzed with a text from his mother. "Margot, how's your house guest?" Jordan, "Leaving tomorrow." Margot, "And you're letting her?" Jordan, "It was always temporary." Margot, "Jordan, I didn't raise you to be a coward." Jordan, "I'm not being a coward. I'm being realistic." Margot, "You're being afraid. There's a difference. I saw the way you looked at her, and the way she looked at you." Jordan, "Mom." Margot, "Your father's mistakes don't have to define your choices. You're allowed to take a risk on something good." Jordan, "What if I'm not capable of good?" Margot, "Then you'd be your father. But you're not. You never have been. Stop punishing yourself for sins you didn't commit." Jordan stared at his phone for a long time after that. Then he opened his contacts, found his therapist's number, and scheduled an emergency session for tomorrow morning. If he was going to let Tessa go, he needed to at least understand why he was doing it. And if he wasn't going to let her go, he needed to figure out how to become the man who deserved to ask her to stay. Tessa woke to the sound of the front door closing. She checked her phone, 6:47 a.m. Where was Jordan going this early? She found a note on the kitchen counter in his precise handwriting. Had to run out. Coffee's ready. Back by noon. J. No explanation. Typical Jordan. Except it wasn't typical, because typical Jordan would have left detailed instructions and probably a backup plan in case the coffee maker malfunctioned. Tessa poured herself a cup and wandered to the terrace, watching the city wake up. This time tomorrow, she'd be in her own apartment. No panoramic views. No perfectly brewed coffee waiting for her. No infuriating, wonderful man who looked at her like she was simultaneously solving and creating every problem in his life. Her phone rang. "Maya." "Before you yell at me," Maya started. "You gave David this address." "I know, I'm so sorry. He called me crying, actual tears, Tessa, saying he'd made the biggest mistake of his life and just needed to see you one more time. I thought I was helping by sending my stalker ex to harass me. He's not a stalker, he's just persistently stupid." Maya paused. "How bad was it?" Jordan threatened him with a restraining order. "Oh my God, that's kind of hot though." Maya. "What? Protective guy defending your honor? That's romance novel material right there." Her tone shifted, becoming more serious. "Speaking of Jordan, how are you doing? You sounded weird last night." "I'm fine." "You're leaving today, right?" "That's the plan. And how do you feel about that?" Tessa looked out at the city, blinking back sudden tears. "Like I'm making a huge mistake, but I don't know what the alternative is." "The alternative is staying." "I can't just stay, this was always temporary." "Says who? Change the terms, tell him you want to stay." "And say what?" "Hey, I know we agreed this was temporary, but I've accidentally developed feelings for you, so can I just live here indefinitely?" "Yes, exactly that. Maya, he practically pushed me out the door last night, told me I should take the international job, move on with my life. He doesn't want me here." "Are you kidding? That man is so gone for you, he doesn't know which way is up." "You met him for 20 minutes. 20 minutes of watching you two pretend you weren't desperately in love with each other. Trust me, I know what I saw." I'm not." Tessa stopped. Was she? In love with Jordan? It's too fast. Says who? There's no timeline for feelings. Sometimes you just know. And sometimes you think you know. And you end up with someone like David who turns out to be completely wrong for you. Jordan is nothing like David. David was safe and boring and you settled for him because it was easy. Jordan challenges you, makes you feel alive. When's the last time you laughed as much as you have this week? Tessa couldn't remember. "Just think about it," Maya said gently. "What do you really want? Not what's practical or sensible. What does your gut tell you?" After they hung up, Tessa sat with that question. What did she want? The answer was immediate and terrifying. Jordan. She wanted Jordan. But wanting something and having it were two different things, as he'd so eloquently put it last night. Jordan sat in Dr. Richardson's office, trying to organize his thoughts enough to speak coherently. "You said this was urgent," Dr. Richardson prompted gently. She was in her 60s, with kind eyes, and a no-nonsense approach that Jordan appreciated. "What's going on? I think I'm falling in love with someone, and I need you to tell me it's a terrible idea." "Why would I do that?" "Because I'm not good at this. At relationships, at letting people in. You know my history. I know that you've spent the last 5 years using work as a shield to avoid emotional vulnerability." "Yes. What changed?" "Her name is Tessa. I hit her with my car." Dr. Richardson's eyebrows rose. "That's certainly an unconventional beginning." Jordan explained the whole story. The accident, the arrangement, the way Tessa had systematically dismantled every defense he'd built around himself. "She's leaving today, going back to her apartment, and eventually taking a job overseas for 3 months. How do you feel about that?" "Relieved?" He tried, but even he didn't believe it. "Terrified. Heartbroken. Like I'm watching something important slip away and I'm too much of a coward to reach for it." "Why do you think you're a coward?" "Because I can't even ask her to stay. Every time I try, I remember Catherine telling me I was incapable of putting someone else first, that I'd always choose control over connection." "Do you believe that's true?" Jordan thought about the past 10 days, about making coffee the way Tessa liked it, about buying extra dictionaries so she'd have options while working, about hiring a physical therapist and arguing with insurance adjusters and threatening her ex-boyfriend. "I don't know anymore," he admitted. "With Tessa, I don't want control. I want chaos, her chaos. Coffee mugs everywhere and translation papers covering every surface, and arguments about sandwich construction. Then what's stopping you? What if I'm not enough? What if I try, and I still can't be what she needs?" "Jordan, you're asking for guarantees in a situation that has none. Love is inherently risky. The question isn't whether you might fail, you might. The question is whether the possibility of success is worth the risk. And if it's not, if I ask her to stay and we try this and it falls apart in 3 months, 6 months, a year, then you'll have tried. You'll have taken a chance on something real instead of hiding behind spreadsheets and schedules." Dr. Richardson leaned forward. "You've been punishing yourself for your father's failures for 20 years. When do you get to forgive yourself for crimes you didn't commit?" The words hit Jordan like a physical blow. He thought about his mother's text last night, about Tessa's face when she'd said he deserved better, about the way she looked at him like he was simultaneously infuriating and exactly what she wanted. "What if I don't know how to do this?" he asked quietly. "Then you learn. With her. Together. That's what relationships are. Two imperfect people figuring it out as they go. She's so much better at feelings than I am. So let her teach you. And you teach her about, I don't know, organizational systems or whatever it is you do." Despite everything, Jordan laughed. "That sounds terrible. It sounds real. Messy and complicated and real." Dr. Richardson smiled. "You have a choice, Jordan. You can let her go and spend the rest of your life wondering what if, or you can take a risk and see what happens. What if it's the wrong risk? What if it's the right one?" Jordan sat with that for a long moment. Then he checked his watch. "I need to go. Session's not over. I know, but I have something I need to do before I lose my nerve." Dr. Richardson smiled. "Good luck, Jordan." He was going to need it. When Jordan got back to the penthouse at 11:30, he found Tessa in the living room surrounded by her packed bags. She was wearing jeans and a soft green sweater, her hair pulled back, and she looked beautiful and heartbreakingly ready to leave. "Hey," she said, looking up. "I was starting to think you were avoiding me. I had an appointment. On a Monday morning? With my therapist." Tessa's eyes widened. "Oh, is everything okay?" "Actually, no. Nothing is okay." He moved into the room, his heart pounding. "Can we talk?" "That sounds ominous." "It's terrifying, actually. For me, anyway." He sat across from her, hands clasped between his knees. "I went to see Dr. Richardson because I needed help figuring out why I kept pushing you away when all I really want is for you to stay." Tessa went very still. "Jordan, please, let me finish before I lose my nerve." He took a breath. You asked me last night what I wanted, and I gave you some bullshit answer about you deserving better. But the truth is, I want you. I want coffee arguments and dictionary stacks and chaos in my perfectly organized life. I want to come home to your translation papers all over my table. I want to argue about whether organizing spices alphabetically is helpful or insane. It's definitely insane, Tessa whispered, her eyes shining. I want you to take that international job. Not because I want you to leave, but because it's amazing, and you deserve amazing things. And I want to come with you. What? I talked to my partners this morning. I can work remotely for 3 months. They'll handle the day-to-day operations. I'll video conference for important decisions. It's not ideal, but it's doable. He moved to kneel in front of her, taking her hands in his. I can't promise I won't try to organize your workspace, or that I won't have strong opinions about luggage arrangements, or that I won't be completely terrible at spontaneity. Jordan, but I can promise that I'll try, every day, to be less controlling, to let go, to choose you over my need for order. His voice cracked. If you want me to, if this is something you want. Tessa was crying now, tears streaming down her face. You're willing to leave your company for 3 months. For me. I'd leave it permanently if that's what you needed. But thankfully, modern technology makes that unnecessary. He squeezed her hands. Tessa, I'm in love with you. Completely. Terrifyingly. I fell in love with you when you called my penthouse a personality-free showroom. I fell in love with you every time you left coffee mugs in improbable places. I fell in love with you when you fixed my espresso machine and shared your emergency coffee supply and looked at me like I was worth something more than my organizational systems. You love me? Hopelessly, inconveniently, completely. He wiped a tear from her cheek with his thumb. So yes, I'm asking you to stay. Not just today, but every day after. Here, overseas, wherever, as long as you'll have me. Tessa laughed through her tears. You're such an idiot. I'm aware. I've been in love with you since you threatened David with a restraining order. Maybe before. Maybe since you carried me up those stairs like I weighed nothing and pretended it was no big deal. It wasn't. It was. Everything you do for me is a big deal. Making my coffee, hiring Patricia, standing up to my ex, asking me to stay. She cupped his face in her hands. You're not incapable of putting someone else first, Jordan. You've been putting me first since the moment we met. I hit you with my car. Details, important details. And yet, somehow, it was the best thing that ever happened to me. She smiled through her tears. Yes. Yes? Yes, I'll stay. Yes, I want you to come with me. Yes to all of it. Coffee arguments and dictionary chaos and your insane alphabetized pantry. All of it. Jordan surged up, pulling her into his arms, and finally closed the distance between them. The kiss was inevitable. It had been building for 10 days, through every argument, every shared laugh, every moment of barely restrained tension. When Jordan's lips finally met Tessa's, it felt like coming home and jumping off a cliff simultaneously. He kissed her carefully at first, almost reverently, his hands cradling her face like she was something precious. Tessa made a small sound in the back of her throat and pulled him closer by his shirt, deepening the kiss, pouring 10 days of frustration and longing into it. Jordan groaned against her mouth, his control fracturing. One hand slid into her hair, tilting her head to change the angle, while the other found her waist pulling her flush against him. Tessa's fingers tangled in his hair, and she felt him shudder at the touch. They broke apart for air, foreheads pressed together, both breathing hard. That was... Tessa started. Overdue, Jordan finished, his voice rough. I was going to say amazing, but overdue works too. He laughed, and the sound vibrated through her. We could have been doing that for days. Your fault. You kept running away. I was being noble. You were being an idiot. Can't it be both? He kissed her again, softer this time, but no less intense. His lips moved from her mouth to her jaw, trailing kisses along the sensitive skin of her neck. Tessa's head fell back, giving him access, and she felt his smile against her throat. We should probably, she gasped, when he found a particularly sensitive spot, talk about logistics. Logistics are overrated. He punctuated each word with a kiss. We'll figure it out. Who are you and what have you done with Jordan Ellis? He pulled back to look at her, his dark eyes warm and full of something that made her heart skip. "You've corrupted me. Turned me into someone who says things like, 'We'll figure it out.'" The horror, completely scandalous. He tucked a strand of hair behind her ear, his touch gentle. "I love you. I love you too, you controlling, wonderful, impossible man." "Say it again." "Which part?" "The controlling part. The love part." "I love you." She kissed him between each word. "I love you. I love you." Jordan made a sound that was half laugh, half groan, and kissed her again, deeper this time, with an urgency that made Tessa's toes curl. They stumbled backward, crashing into the arm of the couch, both laughing against each other's mouths. "Smooth," Tessa teased. "You're distracting." "Good." They ended up on the couch, Tessa tucked against Jordan's side, his arm around her shoulders, both of them grinning like idiots. "So," Jordan said after a comfortable silence, 3 months in Europe. Geneva first, then Brussels, then Paris. The conference rotates between cities. I've always liked Geneva. Have you been? Twice, for business. Never really saw much beyond the airport and conference rooms. Well, now you will. I'll be your tour guide. You've been to Geneva? No, but I speak French and German, and I'm excellent at reading maps. Jordan kissed the top of her head. Of course you are. What does that mean? It means you're competent and brilliant, and I'm hopelessly in love with you. Tessa shifted to look at him. You know you're going to get bored, right? Following me to conferences, waiting while I translate for hours. I'll bring work. We'll have evenings together, weekends, and I'm very good at entertaining myself. This is insane. We barely know each other. We've been living together for 10 days. We know each other's coffee preferences, sleep schedules, and work habits. We've argued about everything from temperature settings to sandwich construction. I've seen you at your most frustrated and stressed. You've seen me at my most controlling and insufferable. You're still controlling and insufferable. And you're still chaos incarnate. Your point? Tessa laughed. Fair enough. Besides, I have 3 months to learn everything else. What's your favorite color? What music do you like? What side of the bed do you sleep on? Green classical when I'm working, pop when I'm not, and whichever side you're not on. Jordan's expression softened. That was smoother than my couch maneuver. I have my moments. They spent the rest of the afternoon tangled together on the couch, talking and kissing and making plans. Jordan called his partners to confirm his remote work arrangement. Tessa called Maya, who screamed so loudly that Jordan could hear it from across the room. I told you, Maya shrieked. I told you he was into you. You were right. You're very wise. I should listen to you more often. Except about giving David the address. Don't listen to me about that. Definitely not about that. When evening came, Jordan ordered from their favorite Italian restaurant, because apparently they had a favorite now, and they ate on the terrace watching the sunset. I can't believe this is real, Tessa said, watching the sky turn orange and pink. What part? All of it. That I'm here, that you're coming with me, that we're us. Jordan laced his fingers through hers. Having second thoughts. Terrified thoughts, but not second ones. Good, because I already told my mother. Tessa's eyes widened. You what? Called her after you talked to Maya. She's thrilled. Also, she wants you to come to dinner next week before we leave. Oh, God. Your terrifying mother wants to have dinner with me. She likes you. How can you tell? She told me if I let you go, she'd disown me. She did not. Her exact words were, if you're stupid enough to let that girl walk away, you're no son of mine. Tessa laughed so hard she nearly spilled her wine. I like your mother. Everyone does. It's very annoying. But he was smiling. She also said we should get married. Tessa choked on her wine. I'm sorry, what? Relax. I told her it was too soon. Did you? I said we'd discuss it in at least 6 months. 6 months? Jordan was grinning now, clearly enjoying her reaction. Too fast. Jordan Ellis, did you just propose a proposal timeline on our first day together as an actual couple? It's called planning ahead. It's called insanity. Is that a no to discussing marriage in 6 months? Tessa stared at him, torn between exasperation and something that felt dangerously like hope. Ask me in 6 months. I'll put it in my calendar. Of course you will. With reminders, naturally. And backup reminders. You're ridiculous. You love it. And the terrifying thing was, she did. She loved his planning and his organization and his completely over-the-top approach to life. She loved that he was already thinking about their future. She loved that he looked at her like she was the answer to a question he'd been asking his whole life. "Yes," she said quietly. Jordan's teasing expression sobered. "Yes? Ask me in 6 months and the answer will be yes." For a moment he just stared at her. Then he set down his wine, pulled her into his lap, and kissed her with such tenderness and intensity that Tessa felt tears prick her eyes. "I'm holding you to that," he murmured against her lips. "You better." They stayed on the terrace until the stars came out, wrapped in each other's arms, making plans and promises and occasionally getting distracted by kissing. When it got too cold, they moved inside, and Jordan built a fire, because of course his minimalist penthouse had a fireplace that Tessa had never noticed. "How did I miss that?" she asked, curling up on the couch. "You were too busy criticizing my lack of personality to notice the architectural details." "Fair point." He settled beside her, pulling her against his chest. She fit perfectly there, like they'd been designed to occupy the same space. "Can I ask you something?" Tessa said. "Always. Are you scared? About us, I mean." Jordan was quiet for a moment, terrified. "I keep waiting for the other shoe to drop, for you to realize I'm too rigid or too controlling or too fundamentally damaged." "Jordan. But I'm also more certain of this than I've been of anything in my life, which is either very brave or very stupid. Probably both. Definitely both." He kissed her forehead. "What about you?" "Scared out of my mind. Every relationship I've had has either been safe and boring or exciting and disastrous. I don't know what to do with safe and exciting. We could try enjoying it? Revolutionary concept. I'm full of them lately." She tilted her head up to kiss him, and he responded immediately, his hand sliding up her back to tangle in her hair. The kiss deepened, heat building between them until they were both breathing hard. "Tessa," Jordan said, his voice strained, "if we keep doing this—" "I know. I don't want to rush." "I know that too. But I really, really want to." "Jordan?" "Yeah?" "Stop talking." She kissed him again, and this time there was clear intention behind it. Jordan groaned, pulling her closer, his hands mapping the curves of her body through her clothes. "Are you sure?" he asked, even as his fingers found the hem of her sweater. "I've never been more sure of anything." "Thank God." He stood, sweeping her up into his arms in one smooth motion. "Because I've been thinking about this for days." "Only days?" she teased, wrapping her arms around his neck. "Fine. Since the moment you called me an arrogant riquinho in the hospital. I knew you liked that. I hated it, which is how I knew I was in trouble." He carried her up to his room, the third floor that had been off-limits territory, and Tessa had a brief glimpse of more minimalist design before he was kissing her again, and she stopped caring about interior decorating. They had all the time in the world for logistics and planning and figuring out the details. Right now they had this, each other, finally, with nothing between them but want and trust and the beginning of forever. And it was perfect. Jordan's bedroom was exactly what Tessa expected. Clean lines, neutral tones, everything in its place. But it was also unexpectedly warm, with soft lighting and a view of the city through floor-to-ceiling windows that made the room feel like it was floating above the world. He set her down gently on the edge of the bed, and for a moment they just looked at each other. The intensity of what they were about to do settled over them, and Tessa felt a flutter of nervousness in her stomach. "Hey," Jordan said softly, kneeling in front of her so they were at eye level. "We don't have to. I want to." She cupped his face in her hands. It's been a while, and I've never felt like this before. About anyone." "Like what?" "Like I'm about to hand you every vulnerable part of myself and trust you not to break them." Jordan's expression softened, and he turned his head to kiss her palm. "I know the feeling. I've never—" He stopped, seeming to search for words. "I've had relationships, but I've never had this. Someone I want to know everything about. Someone whose chaos I want to be part of instead of trying to control. That might be the most romantic thing you've ever said to me. Wait until I get started." He kissed her, soft and sweet, his hands gentle on her face. "I'm going to take my time with you. Learn what makes you sigh, what makes you laugh, what makes you forget your own name." Tessa shivered. "That's very confident." I'm very motivated. He kissed her jaw, her neck, the sensitive spot behind her ear. I've been wanting to do this since you yelled at me in the rain. That's concerning. That's honest. His hands found the hem of her sweater, and he paused. Tell me if you want me to stop. Don't you dare. He smiled against her neck and helped her out of the sweater, his eyes darkening as he took in the sight of her. You're beautiful. You're biased. I'm observant. He kissed her collarbone, then lower, and Tessa's breath caught. And I've been thinking about this for days. You mentioned that. I'm emphasizing it. His hands were everywhere now, her waist, her back, sliding up her ribs with reverent care. God, Tessa. She pulled at his shirt, suddenly desperate to feel his skin against hers. Jordan helped her, shrugging out of it with more haste than grace, and Tessa ran her hands over his chest, feeling the muscles there, the warmth of him. You're not too bad yourself, she said, trying for teasing but landing somewhere breathless. High praise. I'm saving the good compliments for when you earn them. Challenge accepted. He kissed her again, deeper this time, guiding her back onto the bed. His weight settled over her, solid and warm and perfect, and Tessa wrapped her arms around him, pulling him closer. They took their time undressing each other, punctuating each new revelation. Jordan was true to his word, learning her, mapping every inch of her with his hands and mouth until Tessa was trembling beneath him. Jordan, she gasped when his lips found a particularly sensitive spot. Please. Please what? You know what. I want to hear you say it. You're insufferable. You love it. He kissed his way back up to her mouth, his dark eyes intense. Tell me what you need. You. I need you. Something flickered in his expression. Possession? Tenderness? Maybe both. For you have me. You've had me since you called my penthouse a showroom. Then prove it. He did, with gentle hands and whispered promises, with patience and intensity in equal measure. Jordan was careful with her, attentive to every gasp and sigh, learning what she liked, what made her arch into his touch. Is this okay? He asked, his voice strained with restraint. More than okay. Jordan, please. I've got you. And he did. He took care of her, worshipped her with a devotion that made Tessa's eyes sting with tears. When they finally came together, it was perfect, not in the sense of flawless technique or practiced moves, but in the way they fit, the way they moved together, like they'd been doing this for years instead of minutes. Tessa clutched at his shoulders, overwhelmed by the sensation, by the emotion of it. Jordan pressed his forehead to hers, his breathing ragged. Look at me, he said softly. She did, meeting his dark eyes, seeing herself reflected there, seeing love and wonder and something that looked like awe. I love you, he said, moving with her, his voice breaking slightly. God, Tessa, I love you. I love you too. She pulled him down for a kiss, pouring everything she felt into it. They moved together, finding a rhythm that was uniquely theirs, building toward something that felt inevitable and earth-shattering all at once. When Tessa shattered, Jordan was right there with her, catching her, holding her, murmuring her name like a prayer. After they lay tangled together, sweat-slicked and breathless, Jordan pulled the covers over them and gathered Tessa against his chest, his arms strong and secure around her. That was, Tessa started. I know. Better than I imagined. You imagined it? Extensively. Starting around day 3. Jordan laughed, the sound rumbling through his chest. Day 3? I'm impressed by your restraint. What about you? Day 1. Specifically when you told me I drove like a pilot testing the limits of physics. That's so inappropriate. And yet, accurate. He kissed the top of her head. I wanted to kiss that smart mouth of yours right there in the street. In the rain while I was injured. I didn't claim it was rational. Tessa propped herself up on one elbow to look at him. In the soft lighting, with his hair mussed and his defenses completely down, he looked younger, happier, hers. No regrets? She asked softly. None. You? Not even a little one. Good. He pulled her back down, arranging her so she fit perfectly against him. Because you're stuck with me now. Is that a threat? It's a promise. They drifted for a while, not quite sleeping but not fully awake either, wrapped up in each other and the quiet comfort of new intimacy. Tessa traced patterns on Jordan's chest, feeling his heartbeat steady and strong beneath her palm. Can I ask you something? She said eventually. Always. When did you know that you loved me? Jordan was quiet for a moment, his fingers drawing lazy circles on her shoulder. There wasn't one moment. It was cumulative. Every time you argued with me, every time you refused to back down, every time you looked at me like I was worth more than my achievements. It built and built until one morning I woke up and realized I'd rather spend the rest of my life arguing with you about coffee mugs than spend another day without you. That's beautiful, and also weird. That's us. Fair point. She kissed his chest. I knew when you threatened David. You got all protective and territorial, and I should have found it annoying, but instead I found it incredibly hot. Noted for future reference. Please don't make a habit of threatening my exes. Only if they deserve it. Jordan, I'm kidding, mostly. She laughed and settled back against him. Outside the windows, the city lights twinkled like earthbound stars. Inside this room, wrapped in Jordan's arms, Tessa felt safer and more wanted than she'd ever felt in her life. We should probably talk logistics at some point, she said sleepily. Tomorrow. We leave for Geneva in 2 weeks. I know. I made a spreadsheet. Of course you did. Color-coded by priority level. Why am I not surprised? Because you know me. He kissed her forehead. And you love me anyway. Against my better judgment, yes. I'll take it. They fell asleep like that, tangled together, Tessa's head on Jordan's chest, his arms secure around her. For the first time in years, Jordan slept through the night without waking up to check his phone or reorganize his mental to-do list. And Tessa, who usually slept restlessly, slept soundly, dreamlessly, completely at peace. In the morning, they'd figure out the details, pack for Geneva, tell their friends and families, navigate the complicated logistics of combining their lives. But tonight, they had this. Each other, finally, with nothing between them but love and trust and the promise of tomorrow. It was enough. It was everything. 3 months in Europe turned out to be the best and most chaotic adventure of Jordan's life. Geneva was beautiful but rainy. Tessa worked long hours at the International Trade Conference, translating complex negotiations between delegates who seemed determined to misunderstand each other. Jordan set up a mobile office in their hotel suite, managing Ellis Aviation remotely while stealing moments to explore the city with Tessa when she had breaks. They argued about everything. The proper way to fold a map. Jordan, precise creases. Tessa, just shove it in your bag. Whether Swiss chocolate was actually superior to Belgian. Tessa, obviously yes. Jordan, overrated. How many coffee cups was acceptable to leave scattered around a hotel room? Jordan, 0. Tessa, as many as needed. But they also discovered things about each other. Jordan learned that Tessa sang off-key in the shower and cried at sappy commercials. Tessa learned that Jordan secretly loved terrible action movies and made the most ridiculous faces when concentrating on spreadsheets. Brussels was colder and even more beautiful. They walked through the Grand Place holding hands, ate waffles for breakfast way too often, and spent their evenings tangled together in their hotel bed, talking and laughing and making love like they were the only 2 people in the world. I could get used to this, Tessa said one night, her head on Jordan's chest as rain pattered against the windows. To what? Europe? Hotel living? To you, to us, to having you with me instead of waiting at home. Jordan's arms tightened around her. I'm not going anywhere. Your partners must hate me. I've stolen their CEO for 3 months. My partners are fine. Profits are up. The Meridian merger went through smoothly. Turns out I don't need to micromanage every decision. He kissed her hair. Though I reserve the right to micromanage your coffee cup situation. Never going to happen. I know. I've accepted it. Have you? I've learned to live with it. There's a difference. She laughed and kissed him, and they stopped talking about coffee cups entirely. Paris was their last stop, and it was magical. The conference wrapped up its final sessions, and suddenly they had a week of freedom before heading home. They did all the touristy things. The Louvre, the Eiffel Tower, Notre Dame. They ate croissants and drank wine, and walked along the Seine arguing about whether French or Italian was the more beautiful language. French, Tessa insisted. It's lyrical and romantic. Italian is passionate. French sounds like you're trying to clear your throat constantly. That's because you pronounce it wrong. I pronounce it perfectly. I studied French in university. And yet, I'm the professional translator. Touché. See? French. Point proven. On their second-to-last night in Paris, Jordan made a reservation at a restaurant with panoramic views of the city. He claimed it was just to celebrate the end of the conference, but Tessa noticed he was more nervous than usual, checking his watch repeatedly and fidgeting with his napkin. "Are you okay?" she asked as they finished dessert. "Fine. Great. Perfect." He took a sip of wine. "Actually, no, I'm terrified." "Of what?" "Of messing this up." Before Tessa could ask what this was, a waiter appeared with a small box on a silver tray. Tessa's heart stopped. "Jordan?" He took the box and stood, moving around the table to kneel beside her chair. Several nearby diners noticed and started whispering excitedly. "I had a whole speech planned," Jordan said, opening the box to reveal a stunning diamond ring. "But now that I'm here, I can't remember any of it." "Jordan!" Tessa's eyes were already filling with tears. "Wait, some of it's coming back." He smiled, but his hands were shaking slightly. "Tessa Franklin, you are the most infuriating, disorganized, wonderful person I've ever met. You leave coffee cups in locations that defy the laws of physics. Your idea of organizing is making piles of increasingly chaotic papers. You think reading the instruction manual is optional? Is this supposed to be romantic?" But she was laughing through her tears. "I'm getting there." He took her hand in his free one. "You've also turned my entire life upside down in the best possible way. You've taught me that chaos can be beautiful, that control isn't the same as safety, that loving someone means accepting their mess, literal and metaphorical, and loving them more for it. Jordan, you make me laugh, you challenge me. You see past all my defenses to the person I am underneath, and I want to spend the rest of my life arguing with you about coffee mugs and sandwich construction and whether French or Italian is superior." "It's French," Tessa whispered. "We'll argue about it for the next 50 years. He held up the ring. "Marry me, Tessa. Let me be the organized one to your creative chaos. Let me make you coffee every morning and complain about your workspace every evening. Let me love you for the rest of our lives." "Yes," Tessa said, crying fully now. "Yes, you ridiculous, wonderful, infuriating man. Yes." Jordan slipped the ring onto her finger. It fit perfectly, of course, because he'd somehow gotten her ring size without her noticing, and stood, pulling her into his arms. The restaurant erupted in applause, but Tessa barely heard it over the pounding of her heart. "I love you," Jordan said against her lips. "I love you too, even though you just proposed by listing my flaws." "Those aren't flaws. They're features. You're such a nerd. You're marrying me anyway." "Against my better judgment, yes." He kissed her again, and Tessa felt like her heart might burst from happiness. Later, back at their hotel, Jordan confessed that he'd been carrying the ring for the entire 3 months, waiting for the perfect moment. 3 months? Tessa stared at him. "You've been lugging an engagement ring around Europe for 3 months? I wanted to be prepared." "You're insane. You just agreed to marry me. So what does that say about you?" "That I'm equally insane." She looked at the ring on her finger, the diamond catching the light. "It's beautiful, Jordan. Not as beautiful as you." He pulled her close. "I can't believe you said yes. I told you 6 months ago that I would." "I know, but I thought you might reconsider when faced with actual commitment." "Are you trying to get me to change my mind?" "God, no, I'm just—" He stopped, suddenly serious. "I'm really happy, Tessa. Happier than I've ever been." "Me too." They made love that night with a new tenderness, a new weight to their touches. They were building something permanent now. Not just dating, not just living together, but planning a future, a whole life. In the morning, they'd fly home and start planning a wedding. They'd combine their apartments, argue about furniture placement, and probably drive each other crazy with their different approaches to everything. But tonight in Paris, with the Eiffel Tower glittering outside their window, they had this: each other, a promise, and the certainty that whatever chaos lay ahead, they'd face it together. The wedding was 6 months later, smaller than Margot wanted but bigger than Jordan preferred. They compromised, as they'd learned to do about most things. Tessa wore an ivory dress, definitely not blue as she'd insisted to the bridal consultant, and Jordan wore a perfectly tailored suit that he'd only had adjusted 3 times, down from his original plan of 5. Maya was maid of honor and cried through the entire ceremony. Margot sat in the front row beaming like she'd personally orchestrated the whole thing. When Jordan said his vows, he promised to love Tessa's chaos, to always make her coffee the way she liked it, and to only reorganize her workspace when absolutely necessary. The guests laughed, but his voice cracked on the last line. "You're the best thing that ever happened to me, even if you did walk into traffic." Tessa's vows promised to try to put coffee cups in the sink, to appreciate his organizational systems even when they drove her crazy, and to love him through every spreadsheet and scheduled moment. "You're my favorite argument," she said, "the one I never want to win because then it would be over." They kissed as husband and wife to thunderous applause, and Jordan whispered against her lips, "Still can't believe you married me." "You better believe it, Ellis. You're stuck with me now." Best fate I could imagine. The reception was at a hotel with panoramic city views, because of course Jordan had found the same aesthetic from the proposal. They danced, ate too much cake, and Jordan only complained twice about the DJ's organizational system for requests. "You're doing so well," Tessa teased, dancing in his arms. "I'm being flexible. You reorganized the gift table. It was asymmetrical. It was bothering me." "Jordan, I have a condition. It's called being right about organizational aesthetics." She laughed and pulled him closer. "I love you, you impossible man." "I love you too, Mrs. Ellis. I'm keeping Franklin professionally." "I know. I have it in my notes." "You made notes about my name?" "I made notes about everything. Our wedding is very well documented. You're going to drive me crazy for the next 50 years, aren't you?" "At least 50. He kissed her forehead. "Probably longer if we're lucky." They were lucky. Luckier than either of them had ever imagined possible, and as they danced under the city lights, surrounded by friends and family, Tessa thought about that rainy day when Jordan's car had changed everything. She'd been so angry, so frustrated, so completely unprepared for the chaos that would follow. Best accident of her life, hands down, no question. 2 years later, the Penthouse looked completely different. Gone was the sterile showroom aesthetic that Tessa had mocked on her first day. Now, colorful throw pillows dotted the couch, none of them matching, much to Jordan's ongoing dismay. Bookshelves held both his precisely organized business volumes and her chaotic collection of dictionaries and novels. Photos covered the walls, from their Paris engagement to their wedding, to various trips they'd taken together. The guest room had been transformed into a nursery, though transformed might be too gentle a word. Jordan had started planning it the moment they'd seen the positive pregnancy test, and he'd approached the project with the same intensity he brought to multi-million-dollar aviation deals. Tessa was currently 6 months pregnant and sitting on the couch with her swollen feet propped up on the coffee table, translating a contract while absently rubbing her belly. She looked radiant and exhausted in equal measure. Jordan walked in carrying yet another shopping bag and froze when he saw her bare feet on his coffee table. "Don't," Tessa said without looking up. "Don't even start. I wasn't going to say anything. You were thinking it very loudly. My thoughts are always organized and therefore quiet. Your thoughts are screaming 'feet on the table' in capital letters right now." Jordan set down the bag and came to sit beside her, gently moving her feet to his lap so he could massage them. "Better?" "Much," she sighed in relief. "What's in the bag?" "More baby clothes." "Jordan, we have enough baby clothes to dress quintuplets. These are different. They're organic cotton, better for sensitive skin." "The baby isn't even here yet and you're worried about sensitive skin?" "I'm being proactive. You're being obsessive. Can't it be both?" He continued massaging her feet, his touch gentle. "How are you feeling?" "Like I'm smuggling a watermelon, but otherwise fine." She finally looked up from her laptop. "The doctor said everything looks great at last week's appointment, which I would have known if you'd let me come. Jordan, you don't need to attend every single prenatal appointment." "Yes, I do. What if something happens and I'm not there?" "Then the doctor handles it. That's literally her job." "But we've been through this. You can come to the important ones. The regular checkups are fine without you hovering." Jordan looked like he wanted to argue, but wisely stayed silent. They'd had this discussion multiple times, and he'd learned that pregnant Tessa was even more stubborn than regular Tessa. "Fine," he said, "but I'm coming to the next one. It's literally tomorrow. I've already blocked my calendar." "Of course you have." They sat in comfortable silence for a moment, Jordan massaging her feet, while Tessa pretended to work, but mostly just watched him. 2 years of marriage, and she still found herself occasionally amazed that this was her life, that this wonderful, impossible man was her husband, that they'd created a tiny human together who was currently using her ribs as a soccer goal. "Oof," she said, as the baby kicked particularly hard. Jordan's hands stilled. "Is everything okay?" "Fine. The baby's just practicing for the Olympics." She took his hand and placed it on her belly. "Feel." They waited, and then, there. A strong kick right against Jordan's palm. His face lit up with wonder, the same expression he got every time he felt the baby move. "That's incredible," he whispered. "That's uncomfortable, but also incredible. Have you thought more about names?" And here we go, Tessa thought. They'd been thinking about names for 3 months with zero progress. "I still like Maya for a girl," Tessa said. "After your best friend who gave your ex-boyfriend my address." She apologized extensively. She nearly ruined everything. But she didn't, and she's been incredibly supportive. Jordan considered this. "What about Charlotte, after my grandmother?" "I like Charlotte, but then Maya will be offended. So we'll have 2 children and use both names." "Oh, so now we're planning child number 2. I haven't even delivered child number 1 yet." "I'm thinking ahead." "You're thinking 5 years ahead. Can we focus on the baby that's actively kicking me right now?" The baby kicked again, as if agreeing. Jordan laughed and leaned down to press a kiss to Tessa's belly. "Hear that, little one? Mommy wants us to focus on you. Don't team up against me. I'm already outnumbered in this relationship." "How are you outnumbered? There are 2 of you." "Yes, but you've clearly already corrupted our child with your organizational propaganda." "Is it propaganda if it's correct?" "It's absolutely propaganda." Jordan moved up to kiss her properly, his hand still resting on her belly. "I love you. Even though I've turned your pristine penthouse into a chaos zone? Especially because of that." He gestured around the room. "This place has personality now. It's actually a home." Jordan Ellis admitting that chaos is good. "Mark this day in your calendar. Already done, color-coded and everything." Tessa laughed and pulled him closer for another kiss. They'd come so far from that rainy day when he'd hit her with his car. She'd been so angry, so determined to keep him at arm's length. And he'd been so controlled, so certain that letting her in would destroy his carefully organized life. They'd both been right and wrong in equal measure. Yes, Tessa had destroyed his organizational systems, but she'd replaced them with something better. Warmth, laughter, love. The kind of chaos that made life worth living. And yes, Jordan had tried to organize her, but in doing so he'd shown her that structure wasn't the enemy of creativity, that someone could love her chaos without trying to fix her, that she could be messy and brilliant and loved exactly as she was. "What are you thinking?" Jordan asked, studying her face. "That I'm really glad you're a terrible driver." He laughed. "I'm an excellent driver. You walked into traffic. We're never going to agree on that, are we?" "Absolutely not." "Good. I'd hate for us to run out of things to argue about." "Impossible. We still haven't resolved the great coffee cup debate." "There's no debate. Multiple cups is fine. It's objectively inefficient. I'm growing a human. I get however many cups I want. That's actually fair." Tessa's eyes widened in mock shock. "Did you just concede an argument?" "Don't get used to it. It's a pregnancy exemption. I'm going to milk this exemption for all it's worth." "I know I've prepared a spreadsheet of reasonable pregnancy exemptions." "Of course you have." They settled back into comfortable silence, Jordan's hand never leaving Tessa's belly, both of them feeling their baby move and kick, and remind them that their family was about to expand. The nursery was ready. Jordan had made sure of that months ago. They had every baby item ever invented, meticulously organized and labeled. What they didn't have was a plan for the chaos that would follow. The sleepless nights, the unpredictability, the complete loss of control that came with a newborn. Jordan was terrified. Tessa could see it in the way his jaw tightened sometimes when he looked at the nursery, in the way he'd read 17 parenting books and created detailed feeding schedules for a baby who didn't even have a name yet. "Hey," she said softly, squeezing his hand. "We're going to be okay." "I know." "Do you?" "Because you've reorganized the baby's sock drawer 3 times this week. The socks need to be sorted by size and color for optimal—" He stopped, catching her expression. "I'm spiraling. A little bit. What if I'm terrible at this? at being spontaneous and flexible and all the things babies require. Then you'll learn, like you learn to live with my coffee cups, like you learn to let me leave my work papers everywhere, like you learned that loving someone means accepting their chaos. The baby is going to be so chaotic, absolutely, especially with my genes. Oh God, Tessa laughed. You're going to be an amazing father, Jordan. You're already obsessively prepared, which means you'll have everything we need. And when things don't go according to plan, and they won't, you'll figure it out. We'll figure it out together. Together, he repeated, like he was testing the word. That's kind of the whole point of this marriage thing. Right, yes, together. He took a deep breath. I can do together. You've been doing together for 3 years now. You're excellent at it. Only because you're patient with me. I'm really not. I just love you enough to put up with your organizational neuroses. And I love you enough to tolerate your complete disregard for proper coffee cup protocols. They smiled at each other, and the baby kicked again, harder this time. Both their hands went to Tessa's belly, feeling the movement, the life they'd created together. In that moment, sitting in their chaotic, colorful, perfectly imperfect home, Jordan felt something click into place. He'd spent so much of his life trying to control everything, trying to prevent disaster through meticulous planning. But the best things in his life, Tessa, their baby, this beautiful mess they'd built together, had come from letting go, from accepting chaos, from taking risks. Thank you, he said quietly. For what? For walking into traffic that day. Tessa snorted. You mean for you hitting me with your car? We're never going to agree on the details. Never. I'm okay with that. Me too. Outside the windows, the city sparkled in the evening light. Inside the penthouse, a couple who'd started with an accident and turned it into forever sat together, hands on a belly that held their future, both of them scared and excited and completely in love. The nursery was ready. The baby clothes were organized and reorganized. The name debate would continue for at least another 3 months, but they had each other. They had their chaos and their coffee cup arguments and their complete inability to agree on organizational systems. They had everything, and it was absolutely perfectly wonderfully right. Leave your comment and share this story with someone special. It truly helps us keep bringing new stories to you. And if you want to follow every chapter of this emotional journey, subscribe to the channel and turn on the notification bell. Your support makes all the difference.